What is your in-laws from hell story? My sister-in-law wanted my now husband, at the time boyfriend, to move with her to another state so that they could take care of their grandfather together. My husband, a full-grown man, wanted us to move in together instead, which we did. Sister-in-law started to do everything she could to set my now husband up with his ex-girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend and the sister-in-law were good friends. Even after hubby and I married, she continued to try to push the ex-girlfriend toward my husband. It was a nightmare. Hubby tried to get her to stop her crap, but she persisted, so he quit speaking to her completely. Number 2. My husband's family is religious, snake handling, etc. I'm an atheist, but have no problem with religious people. Most of my family is religious as well. One day I posted, "Happy birthday, Darwin," on FB. Nothing more than that. I didn't talk about evolution, etc. Well, crap hit the fan. I ended up being blocked by almost everyone in his family. No loss there. I should add that hubby is thoroughly disgusted with his family and he blocked every person who blocked me. Go, hubby. Story 2. My mother-in-law has a huge house with plenty of storage room. She offered to keep my wedding dress in a spare closet for me. Years later, when I had daughters, I asked if I could have it back. She informed me that the entire dress had been devoured by mice. Apparently, the mice didn't touch any other item in the house, only my wedding dress. My sister-in-law later informed me that my mother-in-law got rid of it out of spite. I would have loved to have been able to have some of the material to share in some ways with my daughters. I would have gladly taken the dress back if she no longer wanted to store it. She could have just asked. That's the big downside of dating mama's boys. Story 3. I have gout and CKD. First time meeting my wife's aunt from her father's side. My condition was brought up during the conversation with her as well as the food that I have to avoid. Witchy aunt. So you can't eat beef? Me. No, I can't. Her. How about pork and seafood? Me. I have to avoid eating pork too, and I still have to watch out for certain seafood. Her. So why are you still alive? Her cheap ways gave us a used comforter as a wedding gift too. Lol. Wifey and I avoid her like the plague. Story 4. I've got a good one. Mother-in-law from hell. No, ex-mother-in-law actually. Wife and I are expecting our second baby and her mom has been living with us for months. We never asked her for any money and I even helped buy her a car. She needed help, so we helped. All we asked her was to please help us with our 3-year-old when we have to go to the hospital for the birth of the new baby. She agreed. She meets some guy and they start dating. She tells us privately she really doesn't like him, but she puts up with him because he spends a lot of money on her, buying her gifts and taking her on weekend trips to the casinos, etc. We go see the doctor and he schedules a C-section because we are almost at the end of the pregnancy and he doesn't want any complications. She had some complications with the first child, so we weren't surprised. We tell mother-in-law the plan and she agrees. The day we're going to the hospital, she comes downstairs with a suitcase and tells us she's heading out with him for another trip out of town somewhere. Says, good luck at the hospital, and doesn't understand why we were both floored by this. She said, just call someone else to come watch her. Literally, the freaking day we had planned to go have her baby, we asked her to watch our 3-year-old, but no. She blows us off for some dude she doesn't even like because he's spending the money on her. We were done. Told her she better get upstairs and pack all her stuff because if she doesn't, it will be in the front yard when she gets back. She packed her stuff up and moved out that night. They had their trip and she missed the birth of her granddaughter. They also broke up a few months later, and she tried to talk us into letting her move back into her house. Frick off. Not happening. Which is the most ridiculous person I've ever met. Sometimes, even parents don't grow up. Story 5. In-laws from hell. Started with a sister who has a lazy eye deciding she wanted to drive us all to a local mountain. Me, my girlfriend, my girlfriend's mom, and dad all hop in. Sister informs us she can't see well and has bad depth perception. Cue longest car ride where I'm constantly warning her of impending traffic, that she isn't in the right lane, and that she should really pay attention to the road. Her father this entire time was regaling her with stories, using very animated hand gestures and even going so far as to stick his face in front of his daughters while she was driving to illustrate a particularly interesting point in his story. He's a terrible driver too, so probably thought nothing of the life-threatening peril he was putting us all in. After driving for a couple hours, we find out that dear sister has no idea where the mountain is. We proceed to bust out phones and Google our way out of the situation, wherein we find we are about 2 hours off course. Yay. Back on course a few hours later, and lunchtime is rapidly approaching. Girlfriend and I hop out of the car as we stop and run over to a restaurant to get food, wherein girlfriend's father announces he wants to take off immediately because he saw a novelty train exhibit sign, and we must go see it. We refuse, he pouts, and proceeds to be in a bad mood for the remainder of the day for us not humoring his train obsession. Back in the car, almost to the mountain, when we realized that this wasn't the best planned day and no one knew where they wanted to go when we got there. I offer some suggestions as I'd been there previously, all of which were ignored. We continue driving. But by this point, it's getting late and we'd need to turn around if we wanted to get home at a reasonable time. I say this right as they decided they wanted to take the long way back to our home city, an extra 3 to 4 hours drive, and I just put my foot down and say no, we're going back the way we came and we're going now. On our way home, we almost got hit by a semi-truck. Wanted to end someone that day. Story 6. If the wrong person sees this, it'll start a debacle, but what the hell. My sister-in-law started romantically and creepily stalking my uncle. Gross, right? She was following him home and sitting outside of his house, sending him text messages asking for him to let her in for just one night of passion, saying that she knows he wants her, and all sorts of other delusional nonsense. She joins a group at his work and would show up to events even after she had been banned. It got pretty scary since we didn't know how far she might take it. She's been attempting to harm herself in the past, and is generally pretty wacko. My brother found out about the stalking and all the other men she had been sleeping with, and she responded by threatening to divorce him. He cowered down and begged her to make things work, because, well, I have no idea why. She convinced him that he was letting our mother ruin their lives, and has been ruining his life since childhood. She forced him to write an email to my mother, letting her know all these things that she had done wrong. None of them were true. In the midst of all this going down, after the stalking and before the letter, my mom had been paying rent to live in a home that they owned. But after my sister-in-law had threatened to kick her out for the 3rd time, she decided to move. She gave my brother 60 days notice and he said no problem. That night, my sister-in-law showed up at the house with the cops and tried to have my mom forcibly removed, and told the cops the story. The cops obviously told her that they couldn't do anything. Both sister-in-law and brother have sent emails to every single employee and manager at both my mother's and uncle's work filled with lies and threats in order to attempt to damage my mom and uncle's reputation. The cops have been called on multiple occasions. It never got violent, but it got pretty aggressive from time to time. There's so much more insanity I could mention, but I think you guys and gals get the point. Insanely crazy. The worst of it all, though, my mother and their daughter, my niece, had an extremely close relationship, and they've cut my mom off from having any communication with her grandchildren. My mom knows my sister-in-law is crazy, and that my brother is either whipped or just as delusional as sister-in-law, or that he's just an a-hole. But it tears me apart to see my mother crying because she can't see her granddaughter. It tears me apart even more to think that those poor kids have to grow up in such an insane household. Story 7. I have a good one, but she's my wife's aunt, so I hope that still counts. Last year, we drove up to their town to spend Christmas Eve with my parents-in-law and their entire family. Her aunt was there, we will call her aunt for obvious reasons. While we go into my wife's grandmother's house and I introduce myself to aunt, and she looks at me and goes, "Wow, you're the baby exterminator I've heard so much about." Side note, I was in the Marines. Those were the first words out of her mouth she had ever spoken to me. Fast forward about 2 hours and many insults later, aunt proceeds to get completely smashed. I mean, she can't put together a sentence and has decided that the time is now to let her mother know how much she hates her. She goes into a great deal about how she believes her mother is a drab. She moves on to say, and I quote, "Over 50 men, mother. That's how many men I've been with. Why couldn't you have taught me how to close it rather than spread them for money?" Well, unfortunately, I was a little sauced and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. So aunt turned her rage over to me. She yelled at me that I must want to go for a ride and proceeded to jump on my lap. Naturally, I stood up quickly and then she went flying off of me and hit her head against the corner of the coffee table. She was out cold and had to be taken to the hospital via ambulance. So she leaves and the rest of the night goes just fine. We all sort of pretended nothing has happened. Fast forward 2 weeks and I got a bill in the mail from aunt stating that it was my fault that she had hit her head, and I needed to pay all of her medical bills because she had no insurance. I got in touch with the rest of the family that was there and we all agreed I certainly did not need to pay her bills. I haven't seen this woman since and she has been barred from all future family events. Overall, fun night. I always hated it when that one person has to be the center of attention. Kudos to this guy for not ending her. He acted pretty well. Respect. Anyway, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. Story 8. I had told my ex-sister-in-law that her mom was talking smack on her, and she stopped talking to her. For some other reason I can't remember, my ex-husband had also stopped talking to her. Months later, he and his mom made up and she invited us over for lunch. I told my ex that I didn't want to go but went along anyway. We got there and everything was going well until my ex went outside for a cigarette. His mom started talking crap about everyone. I wouldn't say a word. She wanted me to join in and started asking me questions, acting all crazy. I didn't answer her. She stood up and threw her middle fingers up and waved them around, saying, "Screw everyone. Screw all my kids." She then asked me some more questions and I didn't answer her, refusing to play into her crazy antics. Her last question was, "Why aren't you answering me and are you retarded?" I told her something like, "I don't want to be gossiping." And she came at me and put her hand over my mouth, hard squeezing it, saying, "Don't speak in my house," and I said, "This is America." She then put her hands on me as my ex came in. She said to get out of there. As I was trying to leave through the door, she took me by the hair, making my body fall back. My ex got her to stop pulling my hair. But then she grabbed me, digging her sharp fingernails into my arm while yelling that I was taking her son away from her. I finally got outside and yelled some expletives at her. I got in the car and cried really hard. I'm so glad to be away from that messed up family. Story 9. My brother-in-law, who I thought I was cool with, apparently had been harboring feelings of resentment and the attitude that I wasn't good enough for his little sister. Last time I saw him, he, 6'+", extremely well-built champion kickboxer, hurt me and shoved me, 5'9" average guy who only ever trained for 3 months, to the ground. Thankfully, we now live on almost opposite sides of the planet. I've told my wife that I will never stop her from seeing him, but I don't want to be within 50 miles of him, and if he ever lays a hand on me again, I will, at minimum, be filing for a restraining order. Dude scares the crap out of me. Another one, not me but my sister's story. Her ex's mother was a true nightmare. She would open and check the contents of her bag, get jealous when her boyfriend bought her presents, had one towel in the bathroom for the whole family, filthy all the time, would come into the bedroom in the middle of the night and turn me around if I was sleeping belly up, would add food I did not like into dishes to trick me, tried to guilt my ex into having us living together with her instead of moving in together in another house. Story 10. Let's see. I'm from the US, my wife is from Quebec. Shortly after we were married, they wanted to come down to visit us. This was 10 years ago or so. So we said sure, but we had a small apartment and told them they could come, but had to pay their own way in a motel and food costs. We just got married and didn't have the money because we had to pay off their credit card. This is another story completely. They agreed, came down, found my parents and invited themselves to stay at their house, requiring them to make them breakfast. For the time they were there, they had to pay all their food costs and they were picky about what they got. Granted, they did pay to go out for themselves when they weren't there, and in passing handed my wife her bank records from her account that had about $500 in it that we were saving for living off it when we went to visit them in Quebec. It showed they had removed the money from the account. Apparently she had access to it somehow. When asked nicely, she said she did and didn't see a problem. I politely told her we considered our money, as it was, in my wife's account, but since my mother-in-law needed it to pay off the same credit card, again, they just took it. My wife was pissed. I was pissed, and told them it was stealing. Fight ensued and ended. I took a short 10-minute drive on my motorcycle to cool off. I came back to find out that my wife's stepdad had tried to hit my wife. My brother-in-law luckily stepped in and stopped it. I went ballistic. I've never been so mad. Middle of summer near the busy pool of the apartment complex, I went off on my father-in-law. They'd been trying to pack and leave before I got back. I went off on him, pushing him, asking why he tried to hit my wife. I'm much bigger and meaner than this guy and he was agitated. Nice crowd gathered of my neighbors rooting me on, obviously knowing what went on because I was yelling it. He backs down and says sorry, and my mother-in-law proceeds to try and tell me that she's the matriarch and we will do what she wants. I made it clear that they held nothing over me and my wife and that we would be doing what we want. They left. I've only seen them once since and talked to them on the phone maybe 5 or 6 times, and half of them were as traumatic as that time. Ever since, my mother-in-law has been trying to get rid of me. I will say that not one person called the cops on me despite the entire pool and a number of onlookers that came out to see the show, and I most certainly looked like I was going to throttle this guy into pulp. I'm surprised it ended with me kicking him out and telling never to come back. If there was a time I wasn't in control, it was then. Damn. No fight? Bummer. Story 11. Not exactly mine, but my husband's. We first started dating when he was stationed in a decently sized border town, my hometown, with a strong Latino culture. My family is not entirely traditional, but when it comes to love and dating, they strongly abide by the old rules. After graduating from college and moving home for a bit, at 24 I had an 11 p.m. curfew, had to introduce all of my dates to my mother, and was expected to remain pure. My mom waited up for me every night and expected a breakdown of my activities of the night to make sure they stayed within her strict guidelines. We had been going out for a year when we lost track of time and he kept me out past midnight. I was sweating bullets the entire ride home. Because in Mexican-American culture, it does not matter how old you are. You still respect your parents and live by their rules until you're settled with a husband of your own. When we arrived at my place, it was lit up like a Christmas tree. Every single light in the house was on and visible from the street, mainly because all the curtains were pulled wide open. My mom ran up to the door and yelled at my future husband until he got out of the car. This 27-year-old man from Iowa was chewed a new one in 2 languages for a solid hour, loud enough for a large number of neighbors to gather outside on their lawns to watch the show. I was absolutely horrified, and absolutely sure this was the end of any romantic relationship I could possibly have with this man. To my surprise, he remained calm, apologized like this was not weird at all, and managed to calm my raging bull of a mother down enough to inspire her to invite him to dinner that Sunday to redeem himself. Over 5 years and a wedding had passed, and she still tries to pull rank on him every once in a while. She still pulls all sorts of hell if he slips up and calls her by her first name instead of the formal Mrs. Twitterless Christie. He has dodged most of the bullets by learning more about our culture and learning Spanish. I'm now the one yelled at. If you don't cook and clean more, that pinche gringo will leave you, mija. You need to get it together. Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Story 12. I just got married at a destination wedding in June. My now husband's parents divorced years ago and proved during his wedding for his first marriage that they can't be in the same town together without causing a drama storm. So they weren't invited. His mom was very smart despite her disposition and figured out we were getting married. Her response was, "Oh, thank goodness I'm not going. I've already been to one wedding of his and I don't want to go through the trouble again." This pissed me off to high hell because I can't imagine how not wanting to be around when my child is getting married, even if it is a second marriage, but whatever, screw her. When we got back, she immediately threw a fit, insisting that she had no idea. We were poking nicely on Facebook at one of my friends who said he'd come but didn't show, and of course she commented, "Don't worry, he didn't even have the decency to tell his own mother." She's also the type to call him and tell him, "We're going to be at your house on Wednesday and staying for a week." Not asking, just telling. She lives 8 hours away, so luckily this only happened once, but I can definitely see it happening in the future. Every time I hear anything about her, it just pisses me off at this point, and I can't wait to move even farther away from her. She hasn't done anything bad, and for that I'm grateful, because I know she's not a bad person, but she's definitely self-absorbed and passive-aggressive enough to just piss me off. Luckily, my parents are awesome and absolutely adore my husband, so after years of having an utterly family, he's finally able to have some decent relatives he can actually converse with. Lucky him. What is your absolute worst meeting the parents story? My ex-boyfriend wanted me to meet his parents, and he said they wanted to meet me too. We decided to drive to their place in the Bay Area for Thanksgiving, as we lived in Orange County at the time. I'm white, and he, along with his parents, are Chinese. Normally I wouldn't bring up my ethnicity, but it seemed to be an issue for his parents. I didn't know they disapproved of me, so I wouldn't have made the 6-hour drive if I had known they didn't want to meet me. When we arrived and knocked on their door, his mother answered, looked at me and said in Cantonese, "I told you not to bring the white girl here." They spoke more in Cantonese, which I didn't understand. To save money, his parents didn't have the boiler on or any heat in the house. This meant no hot water and, therefore, no showers. They had a membership at 24-Hour Fitness, where they went every night to shower. Surprisingly, they insisted we go to 24-Hour Fitness for a shower just 15 minutes after arriving. 24-Hour Fitness is communal showers, which I'm terrified of. I had to change clothes in front of my boyfriend's mother, who hadn't spoken a word to me in English yet. The first communication she showed me was by handing me a hairdryer. The next few days were extremely uncomfortable. Hardly any English was spoken, and I felt like everyone disliked me. I tried to be as quiet, submissive, and polite as possible. I was sent to his mother's garden to pull grass for a few hours, and after that, she seemed to start liking me. Later in the week, she decided I needed to check up at the doctor, for reasons unknown to me. It turned out she had scheduled me for medical examination, performed by a man I didn't know, who spoke very broken English. I explained to her that I was not comfortable with any of this. It was a very embarrassing experience. Meeting the parents is always a gamble, but she hit the jackpot with a full experience. Language barrier, communal showers, and an impromptu medical appointment. That's a tale to tell at dinner parties. Or maybe just keep it to yourself. Story 2. The first time I met my fiancé's mother. We had to walk past her to go to his bedroom. He simply said, "Hi, Mom, this is Nancy," and I greeted her with a simple hi. She responded in kind, and that was the extent of our initial interaction. We were more formally introduced the next morning. However, the next time we saw each other, I came to the house quite tipsy. I enthusiastically talked to her about how much I enjoyed Buffy, which she was watching at the time. I also had a 5-minute chat with her dog, raving about how soft he was. Fast forward 2.5 years, and she's about to become my mother-in-law. During a serious argument between her son and me, she told him, "If you break up with her, I'm choosing her over you." In another story, I was invited to my boyfriend's house for dinner to meet his parents. When I arrived, his father wasn't yet home from work, so we decided to take a walk. His mother asked us to be back by 5 o'clock. We playfully raced back to make it on time, and I reached the door a few steps ahead of him. As I opened the door, I was met with an unexpected sight. His father standing without any clothes just inside the door. I quickly turned around and hid around the corner, while his father let out a yelp and dashed down the hall. We were both extremely embarrassed. It turned out he'd come home and was about to shower when the phone rang, so he answered it without expecting us back so soon. Story 3. She only had her mother. Her father passed away when she was young. I went to her house to wait for her to go home and to meet her mom. There was a bottle of Devoirs on the table. Her mom was pleasant and offered me a drink. I normally don't drink hard booze, but I decided to be polite and accept it. Her mother received a phone call informing us that my girlfriend would be about 2 hours late. The mother sat down next to me on the couch and told me the news. Then the unthinkable happened. Her mom placed her hand on my upper thigh. She suggested we had 2 hours to ourselves if I was interested and smiled. At the time I was only 18, but I had enough common sense to leave quickly. I met up with my girlfriend later that night and didn't mention what had happened, as I didn't see how it could do any good. 2 days later, my girlfriend showed up at my house, wide-eyed and breathless. She told me that one of her best friends had just confessed to sleeping with her mom. I asked when it happened, and she said it was 2 nights ago. So I made the right choice. In another story, my friend is the son of one of the physics professors at my university. When I was introduced to my future instructor, as I had decided to major in physics, I was obliged to make some small talk. He also prepared a lovely dinner for us. I wasn't aware he had 3 other children, so he began talking about them. We discussed how his oldest was in Germany and how his second oldest had skipped a grade. I started to zone out and instead focused on the food, which was delicious. At that moment, he mentioned that his youngest daughter was at Girl Guides. Right as he said that, I let out a very satisfied to show how much I was enjoying his food. I then turned back into my conversation and said, Girl Guides? Yeah, I like them. I quickly realized my mistake. I could see my friend trying to hold back laughter, but I just sat there and continued eating in silence. He gave me a really strange look, and I don't think he's ever looked at me the same way since, even after being my instructor for 6 upper-level physics classes. We never spoke of it again, but my friend enjoys bringing it up every so often. Story 4. I met my ex's mom when I was a teenager. They were a devout Catholic family, and he wasn't allowed to date, so I would go over after school until it was about time for them to get home. We were being intimate and my clothes came off, which was quite intense for us. Then we heard a car door slam. He grabbed my clothes, handed them to me, and told me to hide in his closet. I did, still shirtless. His mom and he talked for what seemed like forever just outside the door. She told him she was going to take a nap and to be quiet. After she went into her room, he came and got me. Right as I was trying to put my clothes on, she stepped out of her room and saw me. We broke up soon after. In another story, when I started dating my girlfriend, I met her mother quite early on, and we got along well. However, it wasn't until nearly 3 years later that I met her father, as he was working overseas. Her father was a no-nonsense, straightforward man, a Buddhist and an Asian engineer who trained rigorously in martial arts. He had raised my girlfriend more like a son than a daughter, so his expectations for any boyfriend she chose were high, especially for her, being his firstborn and the one he invested the most effort in. About a month before her mother's birthday, my girlfriend told me that her dad would be coming down to stay for a few months, and I would finally be properly introduced. Needless to say, I was a bit nervous, as her father had been built up in my mind to be a mix of Bruce Lee, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bill Gates, and Hercules. It also didn't help that I was the last thing an Asian parent would want their daughter to bring home. An arts major with shaggy hair, dressing like a bohemian, and spending a lot of time distracting their daughter. The day finally arrived, and as was the tradition at her household, I brought a cake to celebrate. Who else opened the door but my girlfriend's father? To be fair, he wasn't as big or muscled as I imagined. But his build showed he had seen his share of fights, and like his children, he wore a signature scowl. He gave me the once-over, took the cake from my hands, gave me a $20 bill, and shut the door. I was stunned for a good 15 seconds, but I knocked again to try and figure out what was going on. Her father appeared again, scowl unchanged, and glared at me before shouting back into the apartment. Mazerol's girlfriend, grab me my wallet. The delivery boy wants a tip. Without going into the laughter and horror my girlfriend and her mother had when they saw who the delivery boy was, that was my first encounter with my girlfriend's father. Story 5. It was the first time I'd ever gone to a girlfriend's house to hang out and meet her parents. It was the summer before my 8th grade year. Needless to say, hormones were raging, so I was an awkward, squeaky, barely teenage boy. Her parents were really excited to meet me because I was the first boy her daughter had ever introduced them to. So they planned a family cookout for me to meet the entire family. I arrived around 5 p.m., and since it was in the country in Ohio, all the adults were already hammered. To avoid as many intoxicated family members as possible, my girlfriend and I decided to swim in her pool for most of the night. Around 9 p.m., most of her family had left, only her parents remained. They were inside, and my girlfriend and I decided to have some intimate time in the pool, which in 8th grade meant taking off her swimsuits. We hid them under the towels on the deck so it wouldn't be too obvious that I was not wearing my swimsuit. After about 10 minutes of fun dipping, her parents decided to come out and check on us. However, in their intoxicated state, they decided to join us in the pool instead. My trunks and my girlfriend's bottoms weren't easily accessible while staying completely in the pool, so I had to swim around while her parents were in the pool with us. Never knew how good of a swimmer I was until that day, because they never found out. However, I didn't date her for much longer after that. In another story, My first girlfriend in high school was during my sophomore year. Her mom liked me well enough, but I always felt like her dad just didn't like me. It was very terse. Didn't say much when I was around, but I felt like he was glaring at me every time he was behind me. I was a bit of a metalhead in high school, with long hair and black clothes, but that was it. I ended up moving a few towns away midway through high school, and we split up and lost touch. Fast forward 2 years later. I'd graduated high school and moved back to my original town. I'd just gone through a really bad breakup, so I thought I'd call up my first girlfriend. She was still interested in me and single, so we started dating again and spending a lot of time together. She was over at my house quite often, and I'm sure her parents knew what was going on, but life was cool. A few months in, I was at her house watching TV with her when her dad walked through the kitchen. He was heading towards the basement when he paused, turned to me and said, "Hey, come downstairs, I want to show you something." I froze, glanced at my girlfriend, who shrugged, and I agreed to follow him downstairs. I was freaking out, thinking he was going to confront me about spending time with his daughter, or worse. We headed downstairs to a room I had never been in before. I was pretty sure I was in for it, until he opened the door. A cloud poured out of the dark room with a sound of bass coming from speakers I could barely see, except for the flicker from a giant flat-screen TV. I walked in and the walls were covered in CDs, albums, and posters of good metal bands. The speakers on either side of the couch were almost as tall as I am. The TV across from the couch was huge, and I saw Killzone was paused on the screen. "Have you ever played Killzone?" he asked me. "No, sir," I said. "I play some strategy games and RPGs on my laptop, but I've heard Killzone is fun." "You bet it's fun," he said, picking up his stick for a few puffs. "Check this out." He unpaused the game, which was mid-level, and he showed me how to play, talking about the mechanics the whole time. After about 10 minutes, he paused the game and went to the stereo. "Have you ever heard of Opeth?" "No, sir, I can't say that I have." "You're in for a treat." You spent the next 2 hours listening to awesome metal, playing video games, and discussing manly things, like metal and video games. We never once talked about his daughter. I eventually went back upstairs where my girlfriend looked at me like I'd been gone for a year, asking what happened. I told her that her dad and I just hung out in his man cave for a bit, chilling out and talking about manly things. And that was it. To this day, Opeth remains my first metal band, all thanks to a girlfriend's dad. We split up a few months later due to losing some interest, but in fall 2011, we started hanging out again and started dating for the third time in April 2012. I actually feel like the third time's a charm with this one, as we've both grown up and matured a lot over the years, now that we're in our late 20s. And now, I've got another thing to talk about with her dad, besides metal and video games. My love for sticks, which I picked up a few years ago. So, let me get this straight. It goes from thinking your girlfriend's dad is the human equivalent of a thunderstorm, all brooding and glaring, to finding out he's got a secret lair that's like the Batcave, but for metalheads and gamers. That's like discovering your nemesis is actually your long-lost best friend who just wants to share a stash of rare albums and show you the ropes in Killzone. Talk about a plot twist. Story 6. I had only been dating this girl for a couple of months, but she wanted to travel back home for her cousin's wedding and asked me to go. I agreed, knowing that this meant I would definitely have to meet her parents. The wedding was in her hometown, way out in the sticks of South Texas. We arrived at her parents' house just after dinner time. Both her parents were on the front porch, sitting in rocking chairs. We walked up to the porch and made our introductions. Her mother was a very nice and sweet Southern Belle type, being from Louisiana. She asked if I'd like some sweet tea. I said yes, and her mother went to the house to get the tea, with my girlfriend following to help. This left me alone with her father. He seemed to have a very sour look on his face, not at all pleased to meet me, which I later learned was just his permanent expression. I sat down in the vacanted rocking chair with a small table separating us. He pulled out a small .38 special with a recessed hammer and placed it on the table between us. He said, "This is meant to be fired from a jacket pocket. You'd never see it coming." I looked down at his weapon on the table, then up at him, then back at the weapon, then back up at him. He had these squinty eyes that seemed to be drilling into mine. I then slowly reached behind my back and pulled out my Desert Eagle 5.0 and placed it in front of me on the table. It was audibly heavy and made a satisfying to-chunk sound when I laid it down. I said to him, "This is my Desert Eagle. It's meant to put people down, efficiently." At that moment, his eyes lit up and a smile grew on his face that I didn't think could get any bigger without his face cracking in two. Very soon after, my girlfriend and her mother came back out with the tea and I grabbed my weapon, holstered it, and got up for her mother to sit down. Her father looked at my girlfriend and pointed at me, saying, "I like this one." Her father and I got along just fine. Memories. In another story, the first time I met my now future-in-laws. I wasn't with my fiance at the time. We were freshmen in college and one of her friends from high school was one of my roommates. One day he and I were hanging out at our place. I I was extremely intoxicated and I think it was probably a bit hammered. All of a sudden, she knocked on her door and very sheepishly told us her parents were visiting and wanted to meet her new college friends. She told us she hadn't really made any friends, but didn't want to look pathetic in front of her parents, so she asked if we would help cover for her. She told them most of her friends were at class, but that she knew we would be around, so my buddy and I went to her dorm, where her parents were waiting. They were both nice enough, but I guess I looked even more hammered than I felt. Her parents kept asking if I'd been studying all night or something because I looked so tired, so I just went with it. Fast forward 3 months, we'd started dating, and she was talking to her parents on the phone. She told them about me, and for the first few years we dated, I was Sleepy Steve. It's not that embarrassing, I guess, but I'm not sure if they've ever figured out that I was actually hammered the first time we met. Story 7. I had met my wife's parents once or twice before Christmas. However, I didn't really get the chance to meet the rest of her family or really get to know them for that matter. So when my girlfriend asked me to come over for the holidays, I thought it would be fun. Something you should know quickly. My family doesn't celebrate holidays. We used to, but after a while we just got lazy. So while we might go somewhere nice to eat on Christmas, we don't exchange gifts. And for some silly reason, I didn't consider buying your family anything until I was an hour away from her house. So I quickly got some gifts from a shop that was surprisingly open. However, this place was just a step above a gas station. The mom got an ugly Christmas pillow, and the dad got a collection of shot glasses. The gift wrapped them in the car and drove the rest of the way, not even realizing I forgot to get something for her brother. I got there, put the gifts under the tree as I noticed 8 gifts for me, and I tried to play it cool. They seemed to be making a good impression. By nighttime, I thought I was golden. I went to sleep with dreams of sugar plums and fairy tales, but then disaster struck. I woke up on Christmas morning, retching all over this family quilt. I ran to the bathroom, retching along the way. Luckily, no one woke up. I did my best to clean everything and went back to bed for another hour. I woke up to my stomach feeling sick again. I sat up and retched again. My girlfriend ran in, saw me, and helped me clean up. I made her swear she wouldn't tell anyone. I got up, took a shower, and by the time I was out, Christmas breakfast was beginning. I made it through breakfast, but as we sat down at the tree to open presents, I lost it again. I've never retched that messily in my entire life. Her mom screamed and jumped back, only to hit the couch wrong and topple over it. I ran for the bathroom where I stayed for 15 minutes. When I got back, I was ashamed. The family had cleaned up my mess and told me it was okay and that I should lay down, so I did. Christmas dinner was around the time I woke up. I was sweating, shivering, and barely remembered I was supposed to meet my girlfriend's grandparents that night. They had driven 5 hours to meet me. I stood up, got dizzy, and somehow ended up on the floor. When I decided to close my eyes for a few minutes. And then the worst happened. I had an accident. I texted my girlfriend because that's all I could do. I said, I had an accident, come in here. She came in and asked where the mess was, and I just closed my eyes, took a breath, and muttered, I had an accident. My girlfriend helped me clean up, and her mother came in to check on me. They were trying their best to ignore the smell. Then I heard the fire alarm. The mom had forgotten to take something out of the oven because she was trying to help me. By the time the Christmas ham was being served, I was back in bed, muttering my apologies. The next morning, I woke up feeling okay, so I thanked everyone for the lovely time, said I had a work emergency, and left quickly. God, I hate Christmas. In another story, at the time I was in college and I'd been dating this girl for about 6 months. Since we both lived in a long distance in opposite directions, I'd never met her parents. They decided to come up one weekend and bring a trailer to help her move her furniture into her new house. She told me to wait there while she went to meet them at her aunt's house to load stuff. I thought it was weird she didn't want me to come, but it didn't seem important. So I sat there for hours and hours. And during this time, my lower GI tract decided to voice its displeasure with me. I tried to wait as long as I could, but eventually I figured they hadn't gone back yet, so it would still probably take them a little while. I went into the bathroom and had one of the biggest bowel movements I've ever had. And while I was sitting there, I heard my girlfriend walk into the house looking for me. I got up and flushed the toilet. And to my horror, the water rose but never subsided. With this great testament to the fecal lords piled in the center, all I could do was shut the door while I met her parents. They had a strange look in their face while they sniffed the air. To top it off, her mom was a police officer and was talking about a case at a crime scene and other fun stuff for a first-time meet-the-parents encounter. Oh, that is definitely a shitty situation. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 8. My ex-girlfriend and I were already 2 months into our relationship when she wanted to introduce me to her parents. The evening before, we had Mexican food and I like it really spicy. I ate a lot because I was really hungry that day. And the next morning, my stomach started to hurt terribly. I took 2 medicines, lay down for a bit, and started to feel better. I went on to the meeting, which was at my girlfriend's home. We had a good conversation about everything, and I thought her parents would get along with me very well. Sooner or later, the inevitable massive diarrhea from the meal the day before started to make its way through my digestive system. The medicine's effect wore off. I excused myself to go to the toilet, locked the door, pulled my pants down, and as soon as I touched the toilet seat, it finally went down. After finishing, it burned like a forge fire. I cursed this spicy Mexican food, wiped my mess, pulled my pants up, and tried to flush. Nothing happened. To give you a brief overview of the whole situation, I was at my girlfriend's house, her parents in the living room, waiting for me to return from the toilet, while I had a sick diarrhea, unable to flush. I looked around and found a bucket for cleaning purposes under the wash basin. I filled it with water in the basin and poured it into the toilet. After 3 to 4 buckets, the toilet was as clean as before. And after I was finally finished, my stomach started to hurt again. The clever boy I was, I figured out that doing it into the bucket was way faster to clean things up again. So I pulled my pants down again, sat down on the bucket, and started the whole procedure again. Of course, my girlfriend was curious about what took me so long at the toilet and came to look after me. Well, after the non-functional flush, there was another thing her parents forgot to tell me about. That was the fact that the lock of the bathroom wasn't closing properly. So there I was, sitting on a plastic bucket full of mess, and my girlfriend brought her mother along to the not-locked toilet. Needless to say, I had a lot of explaining to do. In another story, during my freshman year of high school, I went to meet a girl's parents for the first time. We were all around teenagers, and I had my mom drop me off. When we pulled up, there was a rather, I want to say large, but she was not as large as an overweight woman outside. This was the weekend after Thanksgiving, so she was outside doing Christmas decorations or something along those lines. Anyway, I got out of the car and met her. Her name is Anna. We went inside and my girlfriend was there. Then this other woman came around the corner and I almost said, "Oh, you must be her grandmother." But I learned to never call anyone to be a grandparent until they're introduced as such. Thank goodness. I met this other woman as her mother and the gears clicked in my head and I thought, oh, 2 mothers. So in my dark sense of humor, I had to constantly think to myself to avoid adoption jokes for the rest of the night. The night passed, we dropped off my girlfriend back at her house and my mom drove me home. I talked to a mutual friend and just had to straight up ask them if my girlfriend was adopted. I mean, she could tell me in due time, but I just wanted to know the very, very basics, just so I knew. So they shook their heads and said, "You don't know, do you?" Now I didn't know if maybe my girlfriend's father left or the mother divorced. The mutual friend informed me that no, neither of those scenarios happened, but rather, sometime around 5th grade, Brian became Anna. So that happened. This story never fails to escape me, and I cannot wait to tell it to my grandchildren one day. Story 9. In April 2010, I started dating a wonderfully wild spirit of a girl. I was a senior in college, and although we were the same age, she was a junior. I loved traveling. We connected over our mutual desire to explore. She came from a highly religious family of 9. We had been seeing each other for about 2 months when, right before graduation, I suggested a spontaneous trip from our town in Minnesota to Chicago for a fun weekend in the city. We went and had a fantastic time exploring the still quiet city. When we got back, I dropped her off at her place in our town. She was going to stay there for a few more weeks before heading back to the Twin Cities, where I was going to live that summer. I should note that I was smitten and really wanted to be with her. So when she texted me saying her parents were upset that she went to Chicago with someone they didn't know, that we stayed in the same hotel room together, I decided to talk to her parents to ease their worries and keep things honest. I figured this wouldn't be too bad, but it turned out to be quite the ordeal. Within 3 minutes of exchanging pleasantries, her parents expressed their concerns, including a note about their daughter's chastity. I liked this girl a lot and wanted to be decent to her family, so I addressed each of their concerns until there was nothing left to complain about. It took a while. Upon leaving, there were mostly smiles and pleasant goodbyes. But that was the single most uncomfortable conversation I've had to date. Fast forward to another time. I found myself in a different but equally awkward situation. I went to a Memorial Day barbecue hosted by my girlfriend's family. She introduced me to her parents, and I immediately recognized her mom as someone I had a one-night stand with a few months prior. I met her at the dance club where I worked as a bouncer. The club had a ladies' night with male dancers, and that's where I met the mom. I met her daughter there a couple of months later. The mom didn't recognize me at first, but her friend, who was also at the club, said something to her, and then I saw the realization in her eyes. The situation got worse. First, the dad was the head of the distribution facility I worked at while I was in college. Second, I decided it was a good idea to drink and made a fool of myself. I grabbed the mom's rear end once or twice, asked her repeatedly in front of everyone, "Are you sure we haven't met before?" I made reference to a ladybug tattoo she had on her hip in front of her husband. I even made a crude joke in front of her mom's friends and my girlfriend. Overall, I just made things uncomfortable for everyone. Story 10. It was super snowy out, and we were at his friend's house. We'd been playing Rock Band, but they were getting ready to watch a horror film. Since I'm not a big fan of horror, I asked if we could leave. We had plans to see a movie that weekend, so I figured we could go to see it and then head back to his place where it was warm. He agreed, so we headed out. We had to give his friend a ride home first. The roads were pretty terrible, but we made it back okay. After dropping off his friend, we were on our way to the movies when all of a sudden, we found a dark-colored SUV parked across our lane on the highway with no lights on. No hazards, no headlights, nothing. A combination of nighttime and poor visibility from the snow meant we didn't see it until it was too late. There was a semi-truck next to us and nowhere else to go, so he crashed into the SUV as far to the side as he could without running into the semi. We got out and found the driver of the SUV with a friend in their car further down the road on the shoulder. They had already called the police. This girl was in hysterics, saying she'd been run off the road. She was clearly still on the road and there was no damage to her car before we hit it. We still don't know what really happened. At some point, a third car ran into ours. I'm not sure if we were still in the car when it happened or if we had already gotten out, so we were all standing around on the shoulder when the cops showed up. When they finally arrived, the police had us all stand by our vehicles to try and sort out what had happened. Around this time, a fourth vehicle came through. The driver was intoxicated and drove right past the cop car, crashing into the third vehicle, which then slammed into ours. An ambulance had already been called for him, but now there were worse injuries, so more ambulances were called in. We had already called his mom, and by the time his ambulance arrived, she had shown up, but the highway was blocked off. The police walked back and told her which hospital we were going to, and she met us there. When she showed up, we were in the ER. My boyfriend was on medicine, and there I was, his out-of-state girlfriend. All things considered, the actual meeting with his mom went well. She handled the whole situation better than I did and joked with us the whole time. Story 11. I met a girl in high school, and although I could tell she was a bit eccentric, she was also very attractive and showed interest in me. As a typical teenager, I was flattered by the attention. We dated for about 3 months, before she suggested I meet her family. I'd heard some intimidating stories about her father's strict nature. It was known to be quite traditional. She invited me to dinner, and it seemed like it took a lot of convincing for her father to agree. They lived in a very remote area, and since I didn't have a cell phone, I got lost trying to find their house. After driving around for 30 minutes, I had to go back home, call her for better directions, and then try again. Unfortunately, I got lost a second time, because the directions they gave me were quite unconventional. Eventually, I gave up, went home, and called her again. She was upset, but understood it was dark out. Her father then invited me to a cookout the next day. I wasn't expecting her whole family to be there. I arrived around 12:30, only getting lost once this time. As I stepped out of the car, I was greeted by her entire family, who seemed quite surprised by my appearance. I was a chubby, nerdy guy with long hair and a metal band t-shirt. Her father introduced himself with a firm handshake, a bit too strong, as if to assert dominance. He then asked me to take a walk with him to show me around the property. We went into their horse stable and he closed the door behind us. I was nervous, thinking something bad might happen. He pretended to find an old journal and read me a passage that I'll never forget. He was a nice kid. It's a shame I had to tie cinder blocks to his feet and drop him in the pond. Should have kept his hands off my daughter. After that, he patted me on the back and left the stable. I stayed there for a few minutes to collect myself before rejoining the family. Her family teased me about my size and long hair, but it was all in good fun. I finished eating quickly and asked my girlfriend if we could spend some time away from everyone else. She took me to their pond. We did a bit of fishing. We were sitting by the pond, waiting for a bite, when her father came up the hill in a four-wheeler, shooting a weapon into the air and shouting. I was startled. My girlfriend explained that this was just something he did when he had been drinking, which was often. I said my goodbyes and left shortly after that. Despite the experience, I continued to date her for about 6 more months, making sure to avoid any further encounters with her family. I mean, getting lost on the way to a date is one thing, but finding yourself in a stable with a father who's reading from the How to Scare Off Your Daughter's Suitor's Handbook is next-level stuff. Story 12. While traveling to Colombia, I met a girl. After spending just 5 days together, she invited me to her hometown to meet her family. I accepted the invitation, planning to stay at her place for a few days. I was unaware that her entire family shared 3 or 4 houses, moving between them like nomads. Upon my arrival, I discovered it was her mother's birthday, and the entire family, over 40 members, had gathered. I met everyone that day, in a scene that felt like it was straight out of a Hollywood mafia movie. I had to ask each man for permission to be her boyfriend. For a week, I was treated like royalty. I was served first at the dinner table, given the best cuts of meat, and the women of the family washed my clothes and attended to me like butlers. However, she wouldn't have any intimate relations with me under the same roof as her mother and younger sisters, so we stayed at a fancy hotel for a few days. Then she essentially told me that we would need to get married soon, or there would be trouble with the family. I expressed my uncertainty and decided to visit some friends at the beach to think things over. No sooner had I mentioned this than the family started calling, all saying the same thing. I couldn't just leave. It would be much better if the whole family came along to the beach, where we could all have a wonderful time together, and then I would marry her. After receiving several similar calls, I grabbed a random bus with most of my belongings, discarded my phone, and left town. I never looked back. Story 13. My parents are known for their love of pranks. They don't hold back and often find humor in surprising ways, sometimes at the expense of others. When my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 3 months, I invited him over for the traditional meet the parents dinner. As we arrived, the atmosphere was unusually peculiar. Classical music was playing in the background, which was odd, and everyone seemed to be on their best behavior. I thought maybe they had taken my request seriously and decided not to scare this one away. However, I soon noticed something was off. My brother kept correcting my sister and me about our table manners, like keeping our elbows off the table. Throughout the evening, my brother was drinking his beverages quickly and frequently, going back to the kitchen for refills. His fiancée began to act a bit flirtatiously with my boyfriend, and just as it started to make him uncomfortable, my brother shouted, "Who drank my drink?" Confused, we all remained silent. He asked again, this time staring directly at my boyfriend. My boyfriend politely responded that he didn't know but was pretty sure my brother had his own drink. My brother immediately shot back, "Are you calling me a liar?" His fiancée then intervened, saying, "Baby, leave him alone." And my brother exploded. "That's my fiancée, dude. Aren't you here to see my sister? How about you mind your own business and keep your hands off my woman? Let's go outside right now." My boyfriend, taken aback, said he had no intention of fighting and that it was all a misunderstanding. My brother insisted on going outside, but first dramatically took off his jacket and placed a Glock on the table. We all gasped. My boyfriend turned pale. Then my brother made a come-at-me gesture and suddenly burst into laughter, exclaiming, "I'm just messing with you, bro. Welcome to the family." Everyone, except my boyfriend and I, were laughing uncontrollably. I couldn't help but join in, given the absurdity of the situation. My boyfriend eventually found the humor in it too, and the rest of the night went smoothly. 3 years later, we're still together and has proven to be quite the trooper. Story 14. In high school, I was dating a guy who hadn't come out to his parents. We hadn't met them officially, we'd just been on several dates, pretending to be friends. One day we were at his house and decided to use the hot tub. His parents came home early but went inside, minding their own business. It wasn't a big deal since I was just supposed to be a friend. However, he started being intimate with me while his parents were in the house. I told him to stop, but he continued for a few minutes before pulling back and saying, "I think I saw the curtains move." Later, we were downstairs watching a movie when his ex-Marine dad asked him to help with the laundry. For the next hour, I listened through the vents as my boyfriend cried while his dad and his mother belittled him, calling his feelings a stage and telling him to be a man. I didn't want to leave because I felt terrible for him. His mother made dinner for some reason. She prepared London broil, which was really good, so I complimented her on it. She looked up at me for a moment and then went back to eating without saying a word. I sat across from the dad, worried he might become aggressive, but thankfully, he didn't. After that painful dinner, I tried to comfort my boyfriend before leaving. His parents never liked me, but I can't really blame them. Story 15. I started dating a girl during my second year at university. When summer arrived, we both returned to our parents' homes, mine in the north of England and hers in the southeast. After a month apart, we were both eager to see each other. We planned for me to visit her at her parents' house, which also meant I'd meet her family. I was fine with the idea, and we set the plan in motion. I left early one morning for the long journey south. After a few delays and close calls with missed connections, I finally arrived late in the afternoon. She met me at the train station and drove us back to her parents' house. Due to the unreliable train service, I hadn't eaten all day, so we decided to pick up some food in the way. Her parents were well off and lived in a farm just outside a small village. They had many pets. Cats, dogs, ducks, and farm animals, all considered part of the family, each with a name and distinct personality. As we arrived at her parents' house with our food, she backed the car into the driveway. We heard a thud, and the back left tire lifted as we'd gone over a speed bump. She looked at me, confused, and I knew something was wrong. I opened the car door to find a ginger cat lying flat in the middle of the drive. I turned back to her, horrified, and she burst into tears. I jumped out of the car and ran to the house. I realized I'd have to knock on the door, and when her parents answered, say, "Hi, I'm Larry, nice to meet you. I'm really sorry, but your daughter has just run over one of your cats." That's exactly what happened, and it was as awkward as you can imagine. Her parents rushed out to the car, and at that moment, one of their dogs escaped out the front door and ran down the street. Her dad shouted at me to chase the dog, as it wasn't allowed out without a leash. I started running after it, wondering what I'd done to deserve this. I caught the dog and returned to find my girlfriend and her mom crying, while her dad stayed over, unsure of what to do. I didn't know what to say. I was very hungry after not eating all day. I saw the food still in the car and used the opportunity to grab something to eat while they were distracted with the cat. I felt guilty, but they were too preoccupied to notice. The poor cat eventually passed away, and after my girlfriend and her mom calmed down, we managed to have a proper introduction. However, the weekend was a disaster, and we broke up soon after. Imagine trying to explain this to your friends. Yeah, so I went to meet her parents, and well, their cat didn't make it. Oh, and there was a dog chase. Yeah, it was weird. Pass the chips? It's like your life is a series of you had to be there moments that would be unbelievable if they weren't so painfully true. Fathers. What did your daughter's boyfriend do for you to hate or love him? My daughter struggles with challenges. She's always been a bit different in our family. She's the one daughter who's closer to me than to her mom. She prefers staying in and listening to metal music over going out with her sisters, and she'd rather go on a hike than go shopping. Sometimes she wants and does things that I just don't understand. I think a lot of her unique traits come from her challenges, and that can be tough to deal with at times. It means she has special needs. It takes a certain type of person to handle that in the right way. She's my little girl, and I want the best for her. Then this scruffy-faced, long-haired young man came into the picture. When you talk to him, it feels like you're talking to Plato himself, but his performance in school isn't very good. He seems to have a poor work ethic, from what I can tell. He's smart, but I worried he wouldn't have any real-world success. But I paid attention because my daughter isn't stupid, and I figured there must be a reason she chose this guy. It didn't take long for me to see why. He understands her in a way that seems almost magical. Even on her worst days, she's laughing not long after she's with him. It's clear he loves her, just by the way he talks to her and looks at her. Not in a bad way, but with genuine care. I asked why she chose him, and she explained that for some reason she feels calm and happy around him. She said that even when they first met, she could talk to him for hours without getting tired, unlike most people, where she'd feel drained after just a few minutes. They'd have this special dynamic between them. She's practical and down to earth, while he's thoughtful and abstract, with his head in the clouds. Together they balance each other out. In fact, the way they interact reminds me of an old married couple. There's just something really likable about the guy. When you talk to him, you sense honesty, integrity, and a good amount of idealism. He talks about wanting to make the world a better place, and the way he says it makes you almost believe he could actually do it. So, maybe against my better judgment, I gave him my approval. My daughter wouldn't be happy with someone too practical. She needs someone like him, who makes her happy, and I think that's what's best for her. You should save the story until during their wedding. Story 2. I'm so late to this, but I'm going to comment anyway. Just the daughter, though. My dad recently passed away of cancer, but he loved my boyfriend. In his final year. I think it's worth mentioning because of the 2 years prior to that when my dad saw boyfriends, specifically this one, as only an obstacle to his daughter's eventual White House run or best-selling novels. Dad had high hopes for me. My boyfriend came over to hang out with him every day after work to give me, stuck at work until 5, peace of mind. Surprised me by shaving Dad's head after I'd been commenting that the chemo was making his hair do crazy things. Helped me get Dad down the excruciating stairs and to appointments daily. Helped me weigh the decisions of hospice or keeping him at home with me alone. It was getting to be too much. Supported my decision to keep him at home even though he felt hospice would be better for me. Was the first one there to help me when my dad could no longer control his body and would have accidents. Helped me with that without even blinking. Kept track of how much I was sleeping and came over insisting I go nap regularly. Called me in the end anytime he was with my dad and he was having a more lucid moment and I couldn't be there. Assured my dad constantly that I didn't need anyone to take care of me after he was gone, but that he would watch after me for him forever. Recorded himself asking my dad for permission to marry me and insists I only get to listen to it on the day of our wedding. Held my hand during the funeral. Helped me learn how to live a normal life again. My dad was so worried about leaving such a young daughter behind, but he told me he felt a little better about it knowing I'd have a guy like that to watch out for me in my darkest times. And it doesn't get much darker than losing your best friend to cancer. Love to all you dads. Story 3. My youngest son has a type of congenital myopathy that makes him very weak. While he can walk, he can't run or jump and falls down a lot. Needless to say, he finds this very humiliating. We were at a restaurant and my son was standing next to me with untied shoelaces. Unfortunately, he tripped and, due to his weakness, could not catch himself, falling down in the middle of a crowded restaurant. My daughter's boyfriend, without missing a beat, immediately lay down next to him on the floor and asked him, "How's it going down there?" and otherwise made some small talk to ease some of my son's embarrassment. My son is embarrassed and mortified when anyone helps him or otherwise fusses over him when this happens. Anyone walking into the room or looking over to see what the fuss was about saw two teenagers acting like goofs rather than one helping another one get off the floor after falling. When my daughter's boyfriend then jumped up and helped him up, it looked much more natural. He really did, in an instant, save my son a great deal of embarrassment. I realize it's tough to understand. He has always treated my son like his little brother, but that selfless act was unforgettable. Needless to say, I've loved him like a son ever since. Story 4. My ex-girlfriend's stepdad is probably one of the best people I know. He welcomed me into their family when I was struggling with finances and working 2 jobs. They were upper middle class with a bit of disposable income, and they fed me pretty often, so I always wanted to help where I could. Chores, moving, watching the house, errands. It's a family of 4 very emotional females and him. Gotta be stressful. He was a networking engineer and knew my love for computers. Also a huge nerd like myself. Weird movies, video games, a whole lot of things his 4 female housemates didn't share a passion for. He'd invite me to his work to talk and even try to get me hired with him. Ultimately, he is the reason I went back to school. The relationship didn't work out. One night he picked me up to talk. He convinced me not to go back to her and dropped a lot of information on me about who she really was. At this point, she had already cheated on me, but for him to open my eyes about his stepdaughter so that I could move on in my life and find someone better was amazing. We still meet. She has no idea, but we play Destiny and Halo when we can online. I move into my own place in a week, and I honestly am wrestling with the idea of inviting him over for a break from that to watch Volcano High. The biggest thing that told me he cared about me was this. You care about her. You see it every day, and she couldn't care less. Nothing will be enough for her, and I don't want that misery for you. You deserve to be happy and appreciated. I've been trying to tell you for a while. She isn't going to work with you. Story 5. I raised my sister as my daughter, so I don't know if mine counts. My little sister has dated some serious fools in the past. She actually had to break up with one because he literally had no personality. None. That's the only reason she broke up with him. After a few months, she found it creepy that there was literally nothing special about who he was. And she always finds something. So I really hated almost all of them. Except Ricky. Ricky was like a 1950s greaser that just bopped into modern day. He even played Kaneki in Grease at their high school. He wasn't just a handsome young man, he was beautiful inside and out. And he was sensitive. My sister had never been with a truly sweet kid before. He cared for her like no other human could. They were just instant. The first day they were together, it was like they had always been. Ricky isn't going to live to an old age. He had Lyme or something for several months as a kid before his dad finally took him to a doctor. He's okay now, but neurological problems are going to happen when he gets to about 50. So he doesn't feel like he has time to waste on trivial relationships. He was honest with me about it, because he was thinking about a whole life with my sister, so he wanted me to know what that meant. He built his own car from just a VW bug shell and chassis, and when he finished, he built one for my sister. It was a 1969 white convertible bug. So beautiful. I already liked the kid as a person. I invited him over to my house as much as my sister did. I considered this young kid to be my friend. I was sure that even though they were just finishing high school, they were going to be husband and wife within the next few years. And I was thrilled. Then my little sister had an accident. I was at a party he couldn't go to that night because she had schoolwork. It was so hard. He blamed himself. They never recovered from it. He stayed by her until the very end, but she went into some heavy emotional challenges. She started doing bad habits, drinking, and she cheated on him. A lot. My little sister wasn't the same. He forgave her for everything, every time. He knew it was her dealing with the event, which is true, but she couldn't forgive herself for what she was doing to him, and ended it. He was heartbroken and had to talk him out of My sister was his world. I still have Ricky's number. I gave him a car recently that I knew he could fix and sell. My dog cried when she saw him and wouldn't leave his lap while squealing with happiness. She's a German Shepherd, so she isn't little. After about 6 years of his absence, I think she liked him more than even me. I don't expect that they'll ever get back together. Too much pain that wasn't either one's fault. But I've contacted him about cars a few times. I'm actually going to be taking him for a drink soon, since I missed his 21st by a few years. His livable life is halfway over, and last I saw him I noticed a tremble in his hands. He's still Ricky. He's still amazing. He still loves my sister. I still miss him all the time. Story 6. Bad story. I wanted to be a good boyfriend, so I brought pink roses, which are my girlfriend's favorite color, and I picked her up for a date. She loved the roses, put them in a vase, and left the vase on the kitchen counter before we went out. When I dropped her off a little before curfew because I really wanted her parents to trust me, her dad was very cold to me. I couldn't figure out why. I thought I had done everything right.
I left as quickly as I could because it was clear I had done something wrong. She called me 30 minutes later to explain. Her mom had come home, saw the roses, and thought they were a gift from her dad. She was happy because he never does romantic things like that for her. When he came home, she thanked him for the thoughtful gesture, but he had no idea what she was talking about. An argument started because of the misunderstanding. So I ended up in trouble for accidentally showing up her dad and ruining his evening, all because I wanted to be a good guy. Good story. This is about a different girlfriend and her dad. We met at university and we lived in different towns. I was able to borrow my dad's car for the weekend, which was a big deal, so I could drive out to see her. We had been sending texts for 2 to 3 months, so we were both pretty excited to see each other. I was invited to stay over at her place. It was around 9:30 p.m. and my girlfriend and I were hanging out downstairs in the basement. Her dad's computer was down there, so he was working on something. Suddenly, he seemed to remember what it was like to be young. Out of nowhere, he stood up and said, "I guess it's time for bed." I just walked out of the room without saying another word. The sun was still up. I'm not sure what I did to make him like me enough to basically give me the green light to be with his daughter, but it was a really cool move on his part. Story 7. My daughter was about to start graduate school, and her boyfriend was getting ready to go to basic training in a state that was 2 states away from us. 2 months after she visited him, she came back wearing an engagement ring. When he finished basic training, his first job was in a place that was very far away. He told her that it would be better for her to stay in school and finish her studies instead of quitting to be with him. He believed that it would be hard for a short time, but would be better for them in the long run. He flew home during Christmas for a simple wedding at the courthouse. Then, when she graduated, the military paid for her to move and join him because spouses get benefits, but fiancés do not. Now they are almost at their 5th wedding anniversary and are trying to have their first baby. I'm very happy for her. Story 8. I'm really worried about my daughter because I think she's in a very emotionally mistreating relationship. When she was just living with her current husband, she came to visit me and we went shopping together. They live about an hour away from me. A little while later, she stopped by my work. She was crying. Her husband had called her and told her to come home right away because he was hungry and he didn't care about the plans she had made. She said, "I never get to do anything for myself." And that made me very sad because no parent would want their child to feel that way. A few hours later, I finished work and called her to check if she was okay. Her husband was listening in when I told her that I thought his behavior was selfish. He got very angry and started yelling at me, using bad language, and even threatened to have me arrested if I ever went to their house. It's been 5 years since then, and I still dislike him with all my heart. Story 9. This is the story of how I won over my girlfriend's father the first time we met. My girlfriend and I had been dating for a while, so it was time for me to meet her family. This is usually a bit scary, even when you're in your 20s. During dinner, her dad started complaining about his phone. He was upset with the new technology and the phone company, saying things like, "Back in my day, phones just worked." It turned out his touchscreen wasn't working. He had a Windows 8 phone, which wasn't a big surprise, and the company told him he'd have to come in and pay $200 to get it fixed. My girlfriend mentioned that I knew a bit about tech, which often means you get asked to fix things for family, friends, neighbors, and even strangers in a grocery line. So she suggested to take a look at his phone. I said, "No problem," still trying to make a good impression. I quickly looked up the solution on Google and found out which keys to press to do a soft reset on his phone. It worked perfectly. The best part was when her dad turned to me and said, "You can come over anytime you want to drink and watch hockey in the big screen." Story 10. Girlfriend in question here. The two of them climbed Mount Doom together. As an only child, my parents have always been cool with me bringing friends on holiday with me. We were going to New Zealand for a week, so my significant other came with us even though it wasn't long after we started dating. My dad is the really athletic type. My mother and I really aren't, so normally on family holidays, Dad would be off mountain climbing and bike riding and stuff like that on his own. He always encouraged me to go with him, but it wasn't really my thing. But my significant other is really athletic. So on this occasion, they went up climbing on one of the local mountains, which some of the Mount Doom scenes were filmed on. They got on really well together, and my dad really liked having the company of someone who enjoyed it as much as he did. I wasn't sure if climbing Mount Doom together was a metaphor or if they'd actually climbed it together. Could have gone either way there. Story 11. I would say that my girlfriend's father likes me. The first time I met him, I was driving over to pick up my girlfriend to go to the movies. I pulled into the driveway and the garage door was open. Inside there was a Mustang with parts scattered everywhere, and a man covered in oil and grease was struggling underneath the car. He was trying to unbolt something but was having a hard time holding the part and using the ratchet at the same time. I noticed his struggle and decided to help him. I thought I would give him a hand, then get up and meet my girlfriend so we could go out, but we ended up getting along really well, and I lost track of time. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. During that time, my girlfriend came out to find me, working with her dad underneath the car. She was okay with skipping the movie day because she saw that I was enjoying myself, and her dad was happy to have the help. She brought us some sandwiches and sweet tea. I plan to marry this girl, and I hope that one day, our car will belong to both of us. Story 12. My wife passed away whilst giving birth to her daughter, so naturally my daughter and I are very close. From a young age, she would spend her spare time volunteering to help children who were ill, and as she is a musician, she would also teach the children at the hospital I work at how to play the piano and guitar. Along with her kindness, she's the most beautiful young woman I've ever laid my eyes on. She has the sweetest smile and her mother's big blue eyes. When she brought home this scruffy-looking guy who hadn't done well in school, who was unemployed and trying to make his band successful, I didn't like him at all. I'm very sorry if I offend anybody, but I just couldn't understand the attraction she had to him and hoped it would fade into nothing. She could do better. About a year into their relationship, my daughter discovered that she was pregnant. My heart sank, not because I didn't want a grandchild, but because I knew she hadn't planned it and I knew she was too kind to ever consider an alternative to keeping it. Her boyfriend approached me one evening shortly after the pregnancy was announced with a bottle of drink and asked if we could talk. I accepted the offer and we sat down and had a drink together. He confessed that he was scared to have a child, but how he had already started saving money and how he'd start looking for a job. He explained how he knew that he wasn't good enough for my daughter, but that he loved her with all of his heart and wanted to support her in her choice, even if that meant throwing away his music dreams. I will admit we both got very buzzed and ended up getting along well. This boy I had first judged was actually a very nice, warm gentleman who simply wanted the best for my daughter and their future child. That was good enough for me. So I invited him to live with us and got him a job working at the same hospital I work for. Today I have 2 grandchildren and my daughter and future son-in-law are getting hitched next weekend. Story 13. Well, I'm actually the boyfriend that the dad didn't like. When I first met my girlfriend's dad, he had a long weekend. We didn't want to disturb him, so we went and watched movies in her room. Me knowing dad worries left the door completely open. We watched movies until maybe 10:30, at which time her dad called her into the living room. It was apparently time for me to leave, and she said he put it somewhere sternly. I put on my shoes, headed out, but he was already off to bed. The next weekend, they were having a water carnival in their town, a yearly event, and I showed up. I saw him again and said I was sorry. I lost track of time. I wasn't planning on staying so late, and it wasn't my intention to disrespect him. I asked if there was anything I could do to make it up to him. The look on his face changed. He smiled a bit and said, "You can help me make the burgers for all these folks." And we did. Story 14. My ex-girlfriend's dad had one of those big 1990s Dodge Cummins trucks. He would coil roll every car that was behind him, sending a thick black cloud of diesel smoke over everything in his path. One day in front of my girlfriend, he was making fun of my truck, which runs on gasoline, because it couldn't blow smoke like his. I simply asked, "Why is that cool?" He stumbled over his words and gave me a look that showed he was angry but had nothing to say. He finally came back with something like, "You're just jealous." But by then, I had already listed all the negatives of modifying a truck to do coal rolling. I talked about the impact and torque, gas mileage, and even said I thought it was classless and childish. The fact that I shut him up while his daughter was holding my arm clearly bothered him. He had no response to what I said. After that, he never talked to me again. I saw him at barbecues, weddings, and church, but he never spoke to me. About 6 months later, he bought a Jeep. Salty old man. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 15. I'm the son-in-law, not the father. My father-in-law likes me, and I think it's because I can relate to him more than his other children can. He's very successful. He's a well-paid manager in a large healthcare supply company. His kids went to private schools and they lived in big houses in the suburbs. For some reason, his first 2 kids, both boys, haven't achieved much in life. They're both 30 years old and work as cashiers at Publix. There's nothing wrong with that job, but it's not what he expected from them. They're also both still pretty immature. Neither is married, and when they're with him, he still has to parent them a lot. My wife and I were Facebook friends through a mutual friend before we actually met in person. One day she told her dad about how she knew this guy on Facebook who was doing some interesting things. At the time, I was in graduate school and just posted some information about my work. He jokingly suggested that she should get to know me better. 5 years later, we're married. I believe he likes me because when their family gets together, he and I talk about business and science. Meanwhile, he has to remind his sons that jokes and chewing with your mouth open aren't appropriate in polite company. Story 16. I feel like my girlfriend's father hates me for many reasons. The main one being that I exist. He and his wife are the kind of Christians who made their oldest son marry a woman who treats him badly every day because she got pregnant. They not only made them get married, but also rushed the wedding so their reputation in their church wouldn't be hurt by a baby born outside of marriage. Now about me. I'm not religious and neither is my girlfriend, partly because of her parents. When we first met, I was in an SKA band and was planning to go on tour to make a name for myself. I didn't have a real job or any education beyond high school. I had a lot of tattoos that people could see, a beard, and my ears were stretched. I also had long hair that went halfway down my back. I was a big fan of playing disc golf. They moved their daughter from their hometown to mine so we could be closer to each other. And I got their daughter, my girlfriend, pregnant. I just started working as a service technician for a small company because I've always been good with my hands. Did that change your father's opinion of me? No. He's a commercial pilot who earns over $100,000 a year. I worked really hard to earn a good wage, cut my hair, check out my gauges, and now I'm the service foreman for the company. The older owner has told me that I'm being trained to run the whole business so I can take over when he retires. But her father is still not impressed. We've been together for 4 years. Our daughter was born in 2014, and my girlfriend stays at home with her while I support our family and pay all the bills and rent. We're planning to get married this spring. He can think poorly of me if he wants to, because his old-fashioned opinions and views on the world don't matter to either of us. I'm definitely not going anywhere because I love my soon-to-be wife and my daughter more than anything in the world. So yeah, he hates me, but I don't care. Story 17. My father didn't like my now husband until one night about a month before our wedding. We were all in my parents' house watching a movie around 10 p.m. It was raining very hard, so my father went downstairs to check the basement. He found out that a sump pump had stopped working. Water was coming in quickly. My parents' basement had a lot of valuable things in it. My parents had many of their belongings down there. And my grandmother had just moved into a nursing home, so all of our furniture was there too. I was also between apartments at the time because we were getting married and buying a condo, which was happening within a week of each other, about a month away. Almost everything I owned was in that basement as well. My father started to panic. He didn't know what to do and was just getting very upset. My fiancé stayed calm and started telling everyone what to do. He asked my mom to find a 24-hour plumber in the phone book. He asked me to help him move things from the wet parts of the basement to the dry parts. For things we couldn't move away from the water, he found unimportant items like scrap wood and used them to raise the important things. By the end of the night, where everything was fixed and the pump was working again to drain the water, we had only lost one $30 IKEA coffee table. We had chosen to let that get wet to save other things. From that day on, my father's opinion of my fiancé changed a lot for the better. Story 18. Our father passed away when my sister and I were young. As the brother, I guess it's my duty, along with my mother, to approve the people my sister dates. A bit of background. My sister has had some really bad relationships in the past, but she took a break from dating for a while to finish her second degree. About a year before she graduated, a friend and I were talking with his cousin, who is also a friend of mine, about introducing him to my sister. Things didn't go well, and I was glad my sister was going to stay focused on her studies. I let it go. She had been sober for several years and he was a drinker. They just didn't seem to fit together. I learned a lot about everyone involved during that time. 6 months went by and I was going to a metal concert with a buddy, his wife, and the same friend of mine. When I mentioned the bands to my sister, she got really excited and asked if I would take her to the concert as a birthday gift. I agreed and we all went. This time, they got along, which made me angry because I'd learned more about him, friend or not. Within a week, she'd moved out of her house without talking to anyone about what was going on, and she stopped attending her classes within 2 months. I had very strong opinions about all of it. How did my perception change? Her financial aid was gone because she withdrew from school at a bad time. He was working full-time in a warehouse and he paid for her books and classes himself. They got pregnant after she graduated, and he supported her so she could stay home with a baby for the entire first year. They're now expecting their second child in October. They just bought a house with his income. She's a chemical engineer and he works in a normal warehouse. The way he supports her, knowing how much she could contribute to their lives financially, is something I admire about him and his choices to do what he's supposed to do. I believe she'll get back on her feet soon enough, and I personally think he will deserve just as much credit for that. He's working in a warehouse as a worker and they bought a house on his salary alone? Subprime loan much? Story 19. My wife and I let our daughter borrow my wife's car to go to work. One night there was a heavy rainstorm. The street in front of their apartment started to flood. Our daughter called us, panicking because the street was flooding and she didn't know what to do. So my wife and I rushed over to help. When we got there, the street was flooded and my wife's car was stuck in the middle of the street with the water rising. The water was so high that the car wouldn't start, and the back inside of the car was starting to fill with water. My daughter and I pushed the car out of the water to a spot with higher ground, but one side of the inside of my wife's car was already flooded. Her husband stayed inside the whole time and wouldn't come out to help us. My daughter loves him, so I try to put up with him, but whenever my son and I talk about my daughter's husband, we call him the lazy. Story 20. My girlfriend got a job offer in her hometown, which is a few states away from where we live. She moved back in with her parents for now. We decided to do a long-distance relationship and she wanted some time apart, but she asked me to visit her for the weekend in 2 weeks. Since she moved about a month and a half ago, every time she mentions my name to her dad, he makes sure to say how great of a guy I am. When he found out I was coming to visit, he called a friend and got us a free hotel room in the city for Saturday night. He also invited me to stay at their house on Sunday night. Every time her dad was in our city for business, or when we visited her parents, he and I would talk about sports and business while enjoying a glass of drink. With any other of my exes, I never really got along with their fathers like he was a buddy of mine. I don't know how things will turn out with my girlfriend and me, but I know that if I ever need help finding a job, her dad would be willing to help me right away. He's a great guy, and I hope I get to hang out with him for many years to come. Story 21. This isn't about my daughter. She's my roommate's daughter, but we're very close, and I consider her like my own daughter because I've been with him for a while. Her boyfriend is just dumb. He's a rebound from her ex-girlfriend who left her because she needed time to figure out who she was. That made my roommate's daughter think being not straight was wrong, so she got a boyfriend and says she's sort of bi. It works. This makes me really angry because it's clear that losing her girlfriend broke her spirit. Her stepdad is against anything that isn't straight, so the only support she really has is from me and her father. Besides being dumber than a box of rocks, he's also super arrogant. The first day he met us, he walked into our house, ignored my roommate's attempt to greet him, and just opened our fridge. He looked through it and said there was nothing in it and slammed the door. You might think there's something good about him, but you'd be wrong. The daughter came to me on Saturday, crying because she didn't know what to do. She was talking to him on the phone and the topic of her being bi came up. He asked if that was still a thing because he thought he had cured her of it, since he doesn't want her to go to hell. I told her that if she's going to hell, then I'll be joining her. I shared a quote from Marcus Aurelius with her. Live a good life. If there are gods and they're just, they will not care how devout you've been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If they're gods, but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. I explained that his behavior is likely due to his upbringing, and it's likely she can change it. But if she wants to stay with him, she needs to tell him straight, this is who I am. Either accept it or not, but don't think what I am is an illness that needs curing. After she talked to him, he supposedly realized he was wrong. I don't like this kid, not even a little bit. Story 22. I think my fiance's father likes me. My fiance joked that she thinks her dad likes me more than her. When I first met him, it was an art show that my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, was organizing. We were introduced there. I'm more outgoing than he is, so I started a conversation about martial arts. I had learned earlier that day he had studied Taekwondo for a few years, and I had been doing Chinese Kenpo and Jiu-Jitsu since I was young. I'm 33 now, so we had something in common to talk about, which helped us get past any awkwardness. He ended up buying me a drink. Later on, I found out he's a big comic book collector, and so am I. He started giving me rare comics in perfect condition as gifts for Christmas and my birthday. Comics like Hulk number 180, Iron Fist number 1 and number 14, and I was so excited. A year ago during a tour, I took him aside and asked if I could marry his daughter. He got all excited, hugged me and said, I've already accepted you into our family, but here's the official welcome. Ever since my daughter has been with you, I've seen her grow in only positive ways. Yes, you have my blessing. Story 23. I'm a single dad with 2 teenage girls. One night I came home late and found one of my daughters in my bed with her boyfriend. I guess they thought my king-size bed was more comfortable. I had a weapon leaning against the back door, so I grabbed it and walked into the room. I told the boyfriend to get out of my house and never come back. My daughter was more scared than he was. She still says sorry for that night, but she and the boy still see each other. I haven't talked to him since. He hasn't tried to apologize or talk to me. I told my daughter I won't trust or respect him until he shows he's worthy. Years ago, my other daughter had a similar problem. Not in my bed, though. Her boyfriend talked to me, said sorry, promised it wouldn't happen again, and we made a deal. He filled in a huge trench I dug to fix my broken sewer line. It took him many hours. Plus, he beautified my grass several times and was always respectful of my rules. I knew they do intimate things. I did when I was young. I can't stop it, but I can guide my daughters the best way I can. I've been raising them alone for years. One is my stepdaughter. I've made mistakes, but I've tried my best. Girls are hard to raise as a protective dad. Any protective parent, really. I didn't have caring parents. My dad was neglectful. I never wanted to be like him. I know I've done well when I get hugs without asking. I love you texts without sending them first, and when my oldest, stepdaughter, chose to live with me over her mom and biological dad. I still get emotional thinking about the years we've shared and how much it's changed me as a person. I love those girls more than I ever thought possible. I don't understand how a parent could feel so connected to their children and want to do the best for them. Story 24. I'm the daughter. I went through a really tough breakup in November. and a friend I hadn't known for very long was there to help me through it. We started dating, but I never called him my boyfriend because I wasn't ready yet. One day, my uncle called me and asked if I could bring over a new guy, the new friend I was dating, because my uncle had a machine that needed a new part. Since the new guy works with machines, my uncle wanted him to take a look at it. As I was explaining what the machine needed, I realized something. I'd never talked about new guy to any of my extended family. He had only met my father because I lived with him, so how did my uncle know I was seeing someone new? Know that he owns a machine shop, know that he lives close to my uncle and even knows his name. It was my dad. I'd been talking about new guy and couldn't stop, it seemed. My dad hasn't told me directly that he likes my new friend, but he doesn't need to. I already know. Story 25. I'm not a father or a daughter, but I am a son-in-law with a great relationship with my in-laws. When I was dating my wife and first met her parents, we traveled to see them, and I was going to stay at their house. I wanted to make a good impression and knew her father loves to grill. So I bought her mom a bouquet of flowers and her father 2 big bone-in ribeye steaks. I gave him the steaks, he shook my hand, smiled, and we all started chatting in the backyard. My then girlfriend started telling her dad that I liked to cook, and he said, "Great, you can cook the steaks." He laughed and she said something like, "Don't put that pressure on him," and he started to take it back. However, I saw it as an opportunity and insisted on cooking them. Now the thing about my father-in-law is that, for a guy who loves to cook, his grill is not in good shape. He leaves it outside with no cover in the Midwest and has had it for about 10 years, so the grill is really unreliable. I was sweating over this grill, moving the steaks around, trying to cook them just right. It wasn't easy, but they came out perfect. We served them and an old friend of my wife's showed up, tried the steak and praised my father-in-law, who corrected him and said that actually, I had cooked them. This guy was shocked. Apparently, I'm the only other person on the planet to ever touch the man's grill, which I'm glad I didn't know at the time because the extra pressure might have ruined me. It's now been over 3 years, and we still get along great. Story 26. My ex's dad loved me for a reason that wasn't very typical. He had a great job and made a lot of money, but since he lived alone, he had trouble spending it for a while. That changed when he decided he wanted the most ornate, perfect shower in the world. The shower in his bathroom was incredible, with jets everywhere at high pressure from all angles. The floor and walls were made of this gorgeous, thick granite, and there was a sound system built into the walls. You could control the temperature of the water exactly, and the floor was even heated. One day I stayed over at their place while he was out of town. He'd gone out the night before and I was feeling a bit grimy, so I was on my way to the guest bathroom to clean up. The daughter insisted that I sneak a shower in his crazy luxurious shower, so I did. It was the best shower I've ever had, by far. I still dream about it. I've even thought about getting back together with this girl just for the showers. Anyway, after I finished my shower, I walked out wearing a towel. I said, "That was incredible." And her dad replied, "You enjoyed yourself," in a terse, "you trespassed" kind of tone. He'd come home early and scared me. His daughter was nowhere to be seen. So I said, "Sir, if you end me now, I'd end happy." It was perfect. Then he got all excited and started asking me what I thought about each part of the shower. He even got me a drink at 9 a.m. We started drinking and talking about his magnificent shower in great detail. I see him every now and then, and he'll tell me about new additions to the shower and mention how I'm the one that got away. Story 27. I'm the boyfriend in the story. My girlfriend's dad couldn't be more different from me. I live in Maine, and I'm the unusual one. I'm a computer geek, I play guitar, I love playing PC games, and I have long hair. Her dad is the typical, always angry, sarcastic guy from the East Coast. I never thought I'd have a chance with him. The first time I went to meet him, I was really scared. More scared than I've ever been about meeting a dad before. It didn't help that my girlfriend warned me he's never liked any guy she's brought home before. Great. The first meeting was okay. He barely spoke to me. "He's just quiet," she told me. She talked a lot with him. It didn't seem that quiet. He sat and talked with her and looked at me with squinted eyes like he was judging me. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw a PlayStation 3 under the TV with a good collection of games. When I went back to the deck where they were talking, I said to my girlfriend, "You never told me your dad was a gamer too." He stopped squinting and finally asked me some questions. We talked about games for the next hour and a half. He suggested some games to me and I did the same for him. He had finally found something in common. Now we talk about music, games, cars, everything. We're actually pretty close now, and he calls me his future son-in-law, even though we're not engaged yet. I later found out that I was the first guy she brought home who didn't complain about the long drive or visiting him. The first guy who seemed to really care about her and made an effort to talk to him. For Christmas a couple of years ago, he got a PS4 and gave us his PS3. I play it sometimes, but I still prefer my PC. To thank him, I took all the old parts from my previous PC upgrades, put them in a case, and I'm giving him a gaming PC for the next holiday or special occasion.
Mother-in-laws. What are your crazy daughter-in-law stories? I'm going to speak for my aunt. My cousin is a partygoer. He married a party girl. I met her the day of my grandfather's burial. She was dressed like Betty Boop. Too much makeup and balloon-sized fake chest and a sheer black tube dress stretched too far for the imagination. She was sitting at my grandparents' table as I walked bleary-eyed into the kitchen for a bowl of cereal. Half awake, I barely stopped myself from exclaiming. After a burial, we held a sort of Irish burial at my uncle's house. Whereupon, she tried to fling with every male cousin, one by one, asking them to drink with her. I avoided her, so I was last. She got to me when I was having a drink in the driveway with two other cousins. One she had attempted before. She went to my most attractive cousin-in-law first. He dismissed her with, "The mother of my newborn child is inside." I admire him for that. I tend to be less assertive, so I tried the approach of saying, "If you ignore the intimidators, they'll eventually get bored and leave you alone." I ignored her and hoped she would leave me alone. She moved around to try slithering on my back. I pretended she wasn't there. She slithered down my back one last time. I honestly don't remember what happened after that. Somehow she left. I had a dental impression of a purple bruise on my bum cheek the next morning. Let me remind you, this was my grandfather's burial. I'm told that the morning of the wedding, my aunt offered to pay for 100% of the wedding if he wanted to back out. Betty Boop tried to boop-boop-a-doop her way through a very male cousin at a burial, then bit OP. Now she's family. Story 2. Not the mother-in-law, but the sister-in-law. And my mom can't stand her either. She was lovely at first, seemed really nice, but then she started staying over more often until she was practically living with us. And that's when the problems began. I was a teenager at the time and used to be allowed to bring friends back. And my mom would provide us with drinks because, in her eyes, it meant she could supervise us and it stopped us getting way too tipsy in the streets somewhere. The only rules for this were don't drink too much and keep the noise down, which we did. However, sister-in-law could hear a pin drop and would send my brother down to tell us all to be silent even though neither he or my mom could hear a thing from us. It got to the point where we would try to find somewhere else to go if we knew she was there, which made my mom worried. So one night, she's in the kitchen grabbing food while we're playing games in the living room, not making a peep because we're too focused on the game, and once again, my brother appears to tell us to be silent, not knowing my mom's there. She blew up and shouted at my brother in front of all of us about how we weren't making a sound. The volume was even pretty low on the TV. Then she stomped upstairs and went off on my sister-in-law for it. She left shortly after and didn't come back for a while, but eventually she apologized and started coming over again. And once again, it began to repeat itself. After a decade, my brother was planning on proposing to her. He had it all planned out, how he's going to do it in her favorite restaurant, and it all sounded heartfelt. Cut to the day. He's all excited. He knows she's going to say yes because they've been discussing it for a while, and he decides that today at the restaurant he's going to joke with her about how he doesn't want to get married. His joke about it doesn't go over well, though, and she blows up at him in the restaurant and leaves. He's now worried and trying to catch up to her, but he's lost sight of her. He jumps into a taxi heading to her mom's house, only to find she's in the one right in front of him. He catches up to her on the stairs, breathless and crying, and proposes to her right there, trying to explain that he thought she would understand he was joking. He said it in such a sarcastic tone that there was no way she could have taken it seriously. They're now engaged and saving for a wedding. Or they're supposed to be, but she decides she really wants to go to New York City for a holiday, so the wedding gets postponed twice because she decides one trip wasn't enough. Brother is now beginning to fall into debt as she keeps jumping between jobs and can't afford to pay for anything herself. So he asks us not to get him anything for birthdays and Christmas as he could no longer get anything for us and would feel guilty. But we couldn't have him go without, though. The expensive wedding she wanted isn't helping either, and she's becoming a right bridezilla, unwilling to listen to compromise or anything. So nothing extraordinary happened on the wedding day, and they went again to New York City for their honeymoon. Once they get back, however, she plans several more NYC trips for them and a few trips around the UK too, just to get tattoos, because she goes to an artist that isn't Instagram famous and she just needs to go to these expensive makeup shops in London too. Of course, this is all funded by my brother and his credit cards. We barely hear from him or see him anymore, because she doesn't like that my mom shouted at her all those years before. She makes absolutely no attempt to communicate with us, but fully expects my brother to take her mom out for lunches and dinners, which really upsets my mom. This carries on until just before the pandemic, when my brother's cards were fully maxed out. He's in debt that's going to take years to get out of and can no longer pay for expensive lifestyle. They ended up splitting. We don't know at first, as they continue to live together, but we can tell something's up since we begin to actually see my brother in gear from him more often again, and not just when he's looking to borrow money. I was the first one to find out as his best friend works at the pub I always go to, and he has the biggest smile on his face, which is rare. I never liked her from day one and would constantly tell my brother to get rid of her, so when he found out, he was over the moon. He asked if I'd heard yet, and then almost danced in the spot saying it was over with him, and I must say I was glad. Immediately, I dialed my mom, and she was so happy to hear the news, too. He's doing well now, but unfortunately, due to the debt and the pandemic, he still lives with her. However, he's getting his finances back on track, even without any help from Her Majesty, who is flying abroad to see her new boyfriend until the travel bans. Hopefully, soon he'll be able to move out and finally be free of the gold-digging girl for good. Story 3. I remembered my old roommate. He has a mental disability in the actual diagnosed sense. Dishes had to be washed in the scrub clean, rinse, soap down, rinse cycle 6 times, and any dishes they touched were to be considered as greasy as if someone had messed up on them. He knew that I refused to do that when I did dishes, and so he'd yell at me that he had to redo all the dishes just to be sure. So I offered instead to just have my singular bowl and my titanium spork, which would be kept in my room so he and his girlfriend could use or do all the rest of the dishes. He agreed to this proposal, and so the dishes were just never cleaned, because he never had time to do them, and his girlfriend basically just refused to do any cleaning of any kind, and literally took all the medicine in my first aid kit within a week of moving in, and then complained about how threatening I was making things by not spending another $200 to restock it. The sink always stank, and I got passive complaints about not cleaning enough. That stopped once I made it clear that any mention of it would result in a full rundown of how he rejected my cleaning standards and that he had agreed to take full responsibility for the dishes. Story 4. I am the daughter-in-law. My husband and his mom had a strained relationship due to politics the last few years, but a little over a year ago, I was driving under the influence. It was really messed up on my part, and I take full responsibility. I made stupid choices. Anyway, my husband gets the call that I'm getting arrested, and he chose in the moment to call his mom to help, versus my mom. My mom is super chill and a good woman in a crisis and was arguably the more pragmatic choice. But I think he just needed his mom, understandably. So he calls his mom to come watch her kid while he figures out bail and picks me up and all that. I'll never forget coming home at 4 a.m. feeling so embarrassed and overwhelmed, and she was there, arms wide open to accept and comfort me. This diminutive church-going southern mama grabbed me and held my atheist, messed up for what seemed like an eternity, but in a good way. Like all her natural mom energy was passing through me. We may not agree on most things, but I'll never forget how she made me feel loved at my lowest, without judgment or pretense. I hear horrible stories about in-laws and I think how lucky I am. Please call an Uber or cab or friend before drinking and driving. Even if you think you're okay, make a plan before you go out. Believe me, you don't want to go through this. Story 5. This happened to a friend. Her brother married this girl who was his college friend. I'm very happy. I have a baby girl. Suddenly, her father passed away, so her mother went to stay with son and daughter-in-law. At first, she was okay, but after a month, the daughter-in-law started to lock the fridge and pantry doors. In India, fridges come with internal locks. She started cutting down her mother-in-law's food. When my friend came to know about this, we went to her brother's place, packed her mom's stuff, and brought her back to my friend's house. Her brother didn't say bad things to his wife. That old lady is literally the sweetest lady I've ever met. She took care of her granddaughter and cleaned the house. Story 6. Not quite a mother-in-law, but a friend of my mom. Her son was on track to become an engineer, and then he met this girl. She was a teacher and wanted to be a full-time mummy, which there was nothing wrong with. He dropped out of his degree when she told him she was pregnant. Now he's stuck in a dead-end job, and she's insisted he cut off all contact with his family. She's completely wrapped up in every conspiracy theory out there. He no longer talks to his mom or any of the family. I grew up with him, and he was always such a level-headed, confident guy, and now his Facebook feed is full of nonsense. Baby pictures or messages between him and his now wife about how they're going to have the best family forever. The mother or the guy respects his wishes, but whenever my mom mentions her, she always says that she feels like she lost her son. It's a bit heartbreaking, to be honest. Story 7. My mother always made an effort with my ex-sister-in-law, but she was completely unhinged. She and my brother separated after she abandoned their son at daycare to run off and start a new life. In the end, my brother got full custody of my nephew. The straw that broke the camel's back for my mom was when ex-sister-in-law tried to take away my nephew and steal my brother's car during a visitation period. My mom was there to witness the whole thing,
She didn't secure my nephew into his seat, and she struck into a light pole in her haste. Luckily, nobody was hurt. My mother never forgave her for that, and had to step in for my brother a few times during law proceedings to make sure that ex-sister-in-law never got more than visitation rights. And now she has every other weekend visitation and hasn't seen him in 5 years, but has 4 other children by all different fathers trying to tie one down. She's like a referee in a wild game of family tag. Story 8. We lived on the other side of the country for them, so we didn't have many visits. 1 or 2 a year. When we visited, all was well. The house was clean. The kids were cared for. She was fun to be around. However, once we left, life went back to normal for my son and grandkids. She would say she was going to the store and would not come home for 2 to 4 days. She did not clean or anything. My son traveled for business, and when he was gone, she had different men in the house. He would come home to a trashed house, trashed car, trashed everything. She would put the kids to bed, then leave to party. She kept the 2 oldest kids home from school when he traveled. She was too busy sleeping from partying all night to take them to school. As he was making plans to leave her and take the kids, she harmed the youngest child that is now in prison awaiting trial. All of this came out after she passed away. I wish they had never met. Talk about a house party gone wrong. Story 9. My mother-in-law is my second mom and an absolutely amazing person. My husband and I welcomed her first child the day after we graduated high school, and on her 40th birthday, so the 3 of us share birthdays back to back. She helped us raise her son and honestly helped us become the bigger person we needed to be in order to be good parents. We just celebrated our daughter's first birthday. Our son is almost 8 now. She was diagnosed with severe illness about 1.5 years ago. She's one of the strongest women I've ever met. She's the most wonderful, accepting, non-judgmental, kind, helpful mother-in-law I could ever ask for. My son and her have an incredible bond. She raised an amazing son who is my soulmate. Our daughter adores her, and she means so much to me. She's one of my best friends. I keep holding on to hope that we're going to wake up one morning to a phone call from the doctor saying they have the answer and know what to do. I can't even begin to imagine our lives without her. She's the glue that holds us together, and I'm so thankful to have her in my life. Story 10. My sister's ex and his entire family believe that she wants to turn her son into a girl, just because she encourages his outgoing personality and allows him to make his own choices. How dare she let him have emotional outbursts instead of saying, "You're fine, stop acting like a girl," when he cries. Choices like dressing up and pretending to be a girl or boy or painting his nails, these don't seem like red flags to me. Little boys surrounded by women tend to pick up things like makeup and stuff, and my sister just goes with the flow. That family also refuses to acknowledge that my nephew has an uncle that was born female, who transitioned and goes by a new name now. I don't know what my sister's ex-in-laws did to their kids, but they really stunted their mental growth and reinforced gender roles to the point it's nearly toxic. Story 11. I am the daughter-in-law. In my mother-in-law's point of view, I am the antagonist that is ruining her family and its values. I'm controlling her son into a man that rejects his family and won't let them into our lives. My husband suddenly has these boundaries and secrets. He doesn't want to be involved in anything with his family and refuses to invite them over to see our children. I must be changing him and turning him against them. It's all my fault. The reality is, my mother-in-law is a big boundary stomper and doesn't have basic respect for us. We have very simple boundaries and she has fits about them because she can do whatever she wants or when she wants. For goodness sake, she lashed out about how she had to make an appointment to come over to our house instead of just popping by whenever she felt like it. She expects my husband to be her personal free laborer, and her idea of family is her being involved in every aspect of me and my husband's lives. Her ridiculousness just keeps pushing my husband further away from her with each problem she blows up on. So yeah, I'm a horrible daughter-in-law in my mother-in-law's eyes, but I'm honestly neutral about it. I don't need or want her approval. Story 12. My sister experienced it when she lived with my sister-in-law and brother. She had a very particular way of doing things. So she told my sister to not do anything because she had an order. Dishes? Nope, leave it in the sink. Cleaning? Nope, you're not doing it my way. So my sister didn't touch any cleaning. Then I got upset that my sister didn't clean, made a PowerPoint presentation on everything my sister did wrong. These presentations would last a minimum of 20 minutes and up to an hour or so. My sister was confused because when she did help, she was told she was doing it wrong and she told her to stop. Now that she stopped, my sister-in-law is mad even if my sister is not helping. My sister isn't messy by any means. She knows how to clean up. It just wasn't done the way my sister-in-law wanted it to be done. My sister had to sit through many presentations when she lived with them. Story 13. I have 3 daughters, so I have 3 sons-in-law. I have a pretty funny story about my middle daughter's husband. Now I don't like them. He's 12 years older than my daughter, he has a drinking problem, and got DUIs in different states. My husband hired him to work for a small construction company. He would show up reeking of either booze or pot. He would be told to meet my husband to drive to a job. He would show up 2 or 3 hours late for leaving for a job. Best carpenter we have ever had work for us. During this time, we purchased a 1922 house that needed a complete remodel, all 3 floors of it totaling 2,600 square feet. I had surgery on my right foot and leg, was in a cast and couldn't drive, so I relied on my husband, sister, or one of my 3 daughters to get me around. My sister drove me to the new house, where my son-in-law was present but my husband wasn't. I accidentally left my cell phone at the new house and my sister took me home. My husband and I had pet names for each other saved in our phones, with him listed as Mr. Snowflake. When my phone rang, my son-in-law went to answer it but saw Mr. Snowflake and didn't pick it up. He then went home and told my daughter that he thought I was being unfaithful with my husband. My daughter asked him if he had ever really met me. No, I'm not having a secret relationship with anyone. The next day, my husband and I went to the new house and I found my cell phone. While we were talking, I called to Mr. Snowflake in front of my son-in-law, who started laughing and shared what had happened. I was upset by this. My evil ex-husband was the one who kept betraying me. This lady doesn't mess around. Wow. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 14. I'm the future daughter-in-law, and at this point, I'm pretty much considered part of the family since I've been welcomed with open arms. The issue isn't really with me, but with my family. I grew up in very rural Alabama, and most of my relatives are Southern Baptist and quite prejudiced. My partner is from Michigan, but has lived all over. And the very first question my grandparents asked when we started dating is he Catholic? Because they loathe Catholicism. If he wasn't white, they would have been very sad and couldn't allow that in the family. Their words exactly. I have mental problems that were definitely inherited from my parents. The first time my partner met my dad was tipsy. My mom is emotionally controlling and a hoarder. I always feel like a bad daughter-in-law because I haven't wanted his family to meet my family for obvious reasons. They always want me to FaceTime them or come see them when he visits, and I rarely choose to do so. It's not that I don't like them. I love them so much and they have welcomed me into their family so graciously. I just feel bad because my mental health has been at an all-time low and I'm too self-conscious to video chat them, let alone go see them. I used to be communicative with them and a really good daughter-in-law, but lately, I've been really slow about keeping in touch. It's difficult to explain to them what's going on as well because mother-in-law is a cheerful person and does not understand mental disabilities. I tried to talk to her about my dad's mental problem one time and she was kind. She listened but was giving advice that wasn't quite the advice someone would be giving if they entirely understood what was going on. I just hope they don't interpret my limited contact as hatred. I do my best to message them and express my appreciation for what they do for us. I'm working on improving this, but my priority is to get my health in order so I can be the best daughter-in-law I can be. Story 15. Sharing for my boyfriend. Boyfriend's sister-in-law was already a bit mad before the wedding 2 years ago, but really ramped up after this. His brother and sister-in-law argue constantly. Her argument was that he wasn't home enough. She was convinced he was betraying her and or going out for drinks after work. They argue all day, all night. She would call his parents in the middle of the night, screaming about whatever imagined slight he had committed to try to turn them against him. Barged into their house randomly, screaming or demanding to see him. "I know you're hiding him," she screams. The brother was at work. He worked long hours to support her and their baby because she didn't work. Then the pandemic struck and he was laid off. So he's home all the time and they still argue constantly. Now it's just that he's home too often. No winning in that marriage. Story 16. I have a daughter-in-law story. My ex-mother-in-law was over the top. She lived 5 minutes from the ex and she came to his house 5 days a week to clean. She was always telling me to clean, how to clean it, and how I could clean stuff when the product used for it wasn't available. All her conversations were about cleaning. She would come to the house on my free days at 9 a.m. I was laying in bed and she would yell at me to just stay there like I had any choice. She would shout out what and how she was cleaning everything, offering advice from other rooms while I was still trying to sleep. I'm not a messy person, by the way. I clean my house 3 times a week, from the time I left my home. The ex was 27 and I was 24 when he got his apartment. I just couldn't live with it anymore. My ex was unable to stand up to his mother and it created a lot of tension in our relationship. It became increasingly frustrating for me, as I felt that I was constantly caught in the middle. When we eventually broke up, she reached out to me via text, asking why I had decided to end things. In response, explaining that I believed her son had a lot of growing up and learning to do, I emphasized that it would be beneficial for him to navigate this journey on his own, without her interference. I genuinely hope she took my words and considered giving him the space he needed. On a brighter note, my current mother-in-law is incredibly supportive and has a great appreciation for my cleaning skills. She's so impressed that she often allows her cleaners to call me for advice on the best products to use and cleaning techniques. It's quite a compliment, and I can't help but feel a bit proud. Story 17. I'm the daughter-in-law and my mother-in-law is not a bad person. Far from it. She's generous to a fault and overly kind, if that makes sense. But gender roles and religion basically made her teach my husband nothing useful about managing negative emotions, socializing, or domestic chores. She does and manages everything for the whole household. They used to operate at Stepford Smiler levels of toxic positivity at times. They're better now, but it still creeps up at times. So everyone was kind of useless and helpless without her around, and expressing bad feelings or failures was not done. So it was a very unpleasant process for her and my husband when he started dating me, and I started making him do things and manage his own instead of letting his mom do it. I don't care that you don't know how to do the dishes, just learn. I don't care that you think therapy isn't going to help. You need it to manage your myriad of illnesses. I'm not your helper. Step up, mister. I was pretty implacable once I reached a certain point, and my husband, who has a similar personality to his mom, went along with it because he wanted to make me happy, even though my motivation was to make him actually proud of himself and have him feel like he's an actual man who can handle his own business, as opposed to a mentally challenged guy with low self-esteem who was afraid to try anything for fear of messing up. The process of forcing him to learn this stuff made him realize he'd never been taught by his mom, which really soured his relationship with her for a long time. So they were estranged for about 2.5 years because he had so much anger and resentment over it, and to her it looked like I was turning him against his family and said as much, especially because it called him out pretty harshly on the toxic Stepford Smiler aspects that both his parents had. The nice thing is, my husband is happy. His health is well managed, and he's at that perfect blend of self-assuredness but humble, because he knows what he wants and how to do things himself now without turning into a puddle of worry. His parents took my words to heart and mellowed out a lot, and now they all get along again. And I'm honestly happy about it. But hey, it was a long process for a couple of years there. Story 18. Happened to my family. My aunt has borderline personality illness. My uncle and her were both divorced when she met him. She claimed her ex-husband had carved his name to her arm. We all felt really bad for her, and initially she seemed okay. My uncle and aunt used to live with my grandparents at that point when they got married. Then weird things started happening, where she would harm her kids and not let my grandparents near them. Fast forward a few years, my grandmother passed away. My aunt burned all the family photos from my grandmother's safe and stole the heirlooms left from my mother, denies any knowledge of any of the destruction. The neighbors saw all of this happen. My grandfather had enough and asked my aunt, uncle, and at that point 2 kids, to move to the apartment upstairs. He owned the building and I lived off the rent post-retirement. She would throw trash and feces from her balcony into his balcony. Eventually, this woman who was 5'9" and an aerobics instructor threatened to charge my grandfather if he didn't sign over the whole building to her and move out. Eventually, he sold the building to a property developer and now lives with my parents. A couple of years ago, we found out from others who knew her family that my aunt had been diagnosed with personality illness years earlier. She had carved her ex-husband's name into her arm in order to emotionally threaten him to staying. My aunt and uncle are still married, though he literally took up a job in Nigeria just to get away from her. We don't talk anymore. Untreated illness is a horrible thing. If you and your parents lie about it to a prospective partner, that is totally abhorrent. Be honest and seek help. Story 19. I had a difficult relationship with my ex-mother-in-law, who sees me as the villain, and I can understand her perspective. My ex-husband only told her part of the story. For example, after a month of dating, he told her, "My girlfriend got mad and broke up with me because I have a female friend. She said I can only get back with her if I never see that friend again." What actually happened is he was going out at 4 a.m. with a friend, forgetting about me completely or plans we had in favor of a friend, and I chose to end things. He then begged for me back, and I said, "You lack boundaries, and I don't want to feel as I've been, so I don't think this will work." He then told me he'd cut her out, that I am more important. I said I'm okay if he doesn't. There just needs to be boundaries, but he cut her out. Anytime we had a reasonable disagreement, he'd go to her with his half-truths. So to her, I came across as controlling, toxic, and manipulative. He told me she was a raging narcissist with a drinking problem. She treated me terribly because of her perspective, and I shut her out because of mine. Now I know that my ex actually gets giddy starting drama and watching people react based on his stories. I got tired of the drama being with him and left 3 years ago. I gray rock like a champ, so the only person who reacts anymore is him, and he realizes he can't control me anymore. Story 20. On behalf of my grandma, my uncle and his wife are just thieves. My grandparents gave my uncle and his wife everything. They lived on the farm that my grandpa grew up on. My grandparents moved into the ranch next door that my great-grandparents built, and my aunt and uncle moved into the farmhouse. My grandparents owned it all up until my grandpa passed away, and my uncle convinced and controlled my grieving grandma to sign it away to him. He and my aunt auctioned off the farm equipment before my grandpa's body was even cold. Now they lock up all the sheds and garages. Who knows what they're hiding? My grandma even needs to ask to get into her own property. Sometimes when I visit my grandma, I hear the outside basement door creak open. And I know it's my aunt sneaking downstairs to go look for something she wants. My grandma can't hear that door from the living room, so she knows she can come and go without being seen or heard. It's gone to the point that my mom and the rest of my aunts bought my grandma a fridge and freezer with a lock on it, because according to her, our food started to go missing. I hate them, and I don't care that I'm likely not getting any money when my grandma passes away. I care that they steal from her like she's already gone. Story 21. Not the mother-in-law, but my brother's ex-wife. She instigated an argument with him over the phone, recorded him once she got him mad, and pointed him out to the police. She then told him exactly where to find him, as he was employed as a high school teacher at the time. She stopped making payments in the house after she got him out and eventually was repossessed. She started cavorting around with her younger brother and dated him for like 2 years after they divorced. We think that they had been running around behind his back for at least 3 years beforehand. And the real kicker, she was running around with our younger brother mostly at her mom's house. I've even told my brother that if he ever needs her tires broken so she misses a court date, I'm in. Story 22. I feel like my mother-in-law would have every right to post an irrational story about me. I cringe when I think of all the mistakes I made as a wife, daughter-in-law, and as a person. I was diagnosed with mental illness about a year into my marriage, while we were both still college students. His family was amazing and tried to be supportive and loving as my health was spiraling. I ended up in an agitated state after I was harmed by someone I considered a close friend and confidant. It broke me and completely changed the way I viewed myself and the world around me. I thought it had been my choice to be unfaithful to my spouse, and I at the time didn't realize the extent to which I had been controlled and manipulated. This obviously stressed my marriage, and I didn't have enough courage to admit anything to my husband until I was tipsy after our party one late night. And yet my husband still loved me and embraced me as close as he could. I ended up leaving him and moving out for 3 months, all while betraying him. I felt confused and lost. I feel like hyperactivity was a way that I was subconsciously trying to grasp for control in a world where I felt utterly powerless. His family was heartbroken. My mother-in-law, especially, who was mentally challenged, reached out to me at several different points to see what was going on. Everyone who knew me knew I was acting strange and not like myself. I wasn't the person I had been before. It wasn't until I was taking an expressive art therapy class a few months later where I learned the definition of distress and started doing some introspection that I was really able to start the healing process. I reached out to my husband, who had been battling his own after I left, and we started reconnecting and dating again. It was a breath of fresh air. I felt like I was more myself, or that I could only be my best self if I was with him. We fell in love again, and I realized he was truly my best friend. I didn't see his family for a long time after that. I was worried they would hate me for the way I hurt their son. But they begged me to come see them, and all they did was wrap their arms around me and tell me how much they were proud of me for coming back and for trying to get my marriage back. Fast forward to today. My husband and I are about to celebrate our 3-year anniversary, and we both feel grateful for the circumstances in life and even for the bad parts. It makes the beauty of our marriage even stronger because we've been through so much pain. We have a beautiful life together. Story 23. Obligatory, not a mother-in-law, but posting from a mother who is too saddened by the situation to find the humor. The youngest of my 2 brothers, Leo, is engaged or maybe married by now to an absolute wombat. They got together years ago now, maybe 10 years ago, and she was dating his best friend and also another one of our brothers, George. According to my best friend, who has no reason to lie and is otherwise a pretty sound guy, Leo suggested that he begin dating this girl and best mate could just date her younger sister instead. What an excellent solution. Things got weirder in conversation with younger sister. Here are some of our top memories from their relationship. Trying to ostracize George completely, refusing to go to family gatherings where he might be, spreading lies about him such as he had flirted with Leo and also the girlfriend, to which witnesses said did not happen. Then refusing to associate with George unless he agreed to never drink around them. arranging to visit and then just not showing. On more than one occasion, I had fully stocked my fridge in anticipation of them coming. Big difference in food shops when you live on your own to having 2 house guests for a weekend, and on one particular memorable day, we were with my parents. My partner and my younger sister sat in a restaurant, waiting for them to arrive so we could order when they eventually answered the phone and said they weren't coming. Girlfriend and Leo came to visit our parents at the same time I was there. I had already arranged a date with a guy I was casually seeing at the time, and one of the evenings I was there, girlfriend told me I was selfish and needed to sort out my priorities for going on said date. Not staying in to watch TV with him as I could see him anytime but not them. Little sister moved nearby for university. They expected her to drive the 50 miles or so over a toll bridge to cast it whenever they requested, at her own expense, not so much as reimbursement for fuel. If she had other plans or said no, they would refuse to speak to her for weeks. Got tipsy with little sister and told her she had to choose between having a relationship with a girlfriend or her parents and George. When the sister challenged her the next morning in front of Leo, claiming her sister was lying to make her look bad, our paternal grandmother had passed away and they sulked and refused to talk to our parents because they didn't give them enough for my dad's inheritance. Dad gave each of his children £1,000 in cash. They bought a house over 200 miles from my parents and sulked because our parents didn't race there every weekend to help move or set up or do DIY for them. My dad hurt his leg and they threw a fit because he had been planning to go and help them move the weekend after it happened and then obviously he couldn't. George hurt his leg and she told Mom he was off his face on substance when he did it. She apparently knew because her friend worked in A&E and was on shift when George came in, then told her. They got engaged and didn't invite my stepdaughters to the wedding, just my partner. Our daughter and me, as my stepdaughters aren't really their family. Her direct quote. Then I couldn't understand why we declined their invitation to go to their destination wedding. Refused to speak to me, bad mouth about me to anyone who would listen. The wedding was scheduled for summer 2020, hence why I don't know if they're married or not. I had to stay at my parents' house over my sister's birthday weekend when she had already planned a birthday party there. Got upset because my sister didn't introduce her girlfriend to her friends properly, so sulked in her bedroom all night. The next day they shouted at sister for over an hour as they had partied too late, causing girlfriend to oversleep and miss brunch. Had a dog that bit me. My partner and my dad on various occasions refused to train it or engage in any kind of dog lessons. And girlfriend said that they weren't comfortable with my partner and I bringing our children to my parents if they were there with a dog, as they wouldn't be able to relax. They have given the dog away now. Invited all the family to come to their house for a meal the second weekend in January. The week before, they changed the meal at their house to restaurant meal and drinks and needed to get a hotel as they couldn't afford to feed us all, and it was causing my girlfriend too much stress. I gave her parents the heads up and I was going to decline as we couldn't really afford fuel, and then the cost of the meal at the restaurant they had picked and hotel as well, so my parents kindly offered to pay for myself and my partner's meal, as they wanted to build family relations. Girlfriend clocked dad quietly paying for us and created a scene in the restaurant, then texted my parents to check that we were planning on paying them back, and had transferred the money the next morning. They are currently refusing to talk to me and my younger sister. Not sure why my younger sister, but George has claimed that they are not talking to me as I'm pregnant, and didn't acknowledge my girlfriend's pregnancy loss, which I found out about when George said this was why they are not talking to me. So far, this is the third time I lost my baby, I'm now aware of. The first one she announced in response to my first pregnancy announcement. The second when we arrived at my parents' and my daughter's first Christmas, and then this one with my second pregnancy announcement. My sister told me that my girlfriend has deleted both of us on Facebook and Instagram right now. George set up a family group chat as he lives abroad and found out her girlfriend appears to have blocked him. Leo left the chat in under 2 hours without a single comment. It's peaceful and bliss, and I would be happy to continue this if Mom didn't cry every time they were mentioned. Story 24. Not a daughter-in-law, and she's not technically my mother-in-law as we're not yet married. But when I first started going out with my partner, she really made it obvious I wasn't favored. My partner is our oldest child and had a disability when she was in high school. Due to this, she had a pretty close relationship with her mom, and I think her mom struggled with having to share her or something. After we'd been going out for about 4 months, her mom sat her down and told her she didn't have to be with someone like me just because she has a disability. The first 2 years we were together, I wasn't invited by her mom when she took the whole family out for dinner for my partner's birthday. I only stayed around their house twice before my partner got pregnant, and the first time I stayed around in a separate room with my partner. She took my partner to one side the next day and said I needed to go before 4 p.m. so they could all have a family dinner. We have a fantastic relationship now. I love her to bits, but she sure did make it hard the first few years. Story 25. So I have an aunt who passed away recently that I always thought had 3 sons. Turns out she has a 4th who I never met or even heard of. As far as we know, he was a normal guy, graduated, had a decent job, got married, and had 2 kids. Out of the blue, he calls his mother and says he wants nothing to do with her, claiming she has ruined him as a person. He completely removes himself from the entire family, with no contact whatsoever. The hard part, however, was there was absolutely no reason why all this happened. The parents, siblings, friends, and extended family could not figure out what happened or why he did this. He had another child later on that we only knew about because someone spotted him and his family at a hardware store. His mother passed away during the pandemic, and the eldest brother thinks he saw him standing at the back. However, masks made it difficult by that time. A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine told me this exact story, and I was like, wait, I know these people. And he said that this guy's wife was into black magic and superstition, which she used to push him into, the way that he is.
We are getting married in 3 hours, and we both feel miserable about it. I'll start by saying my bride and I both completely love each other and cannot wait to share a last name, among many other things. We originally had the date planned for July, but things have been moved up much sooner than we expected. This is a very enmeshed family. Her mom has single-handedly ruined everything special about our wedding. Ever since the time of engagement, her mom had been constantly upset and throwing a fit about every decision we make. Examples. First, we got engaged too soon. Then we didn't involve her enough. Then we involved her too much. Then she says I don't stand up for myself enough. Then she says I'm a control freak. She's upset about the timing of the wedding shower my family is having for my bride. She's upset they misspelled her name on the invitation by accident. She, yes, still talking about her mom, acts like the shower is for her. She's extremely upset that we live together in a house we just purchased. Everything goes back to, you're doing it wrong in God's eyes. Regardless of what you believe, if it's God you believe in, I would think he would want us happy and not completely miserable on our wedding day. Her mom can't see that at all. She doesn't know how to keep any opinions to herself, and because of it has ruined everything special about my engagement and my wedding. I don't know what to do. It feels just like another day. We are not dressing up, and I'm taking a lunch break from work to get married. We're going to the courthouse, and the whole thing should be done in like 15 minutes. We thought we could do this and in July have a ceremony for the family, but even that is ruined now. Her mom has canceled anything she is paid for and is leaving us out of the loop as if she is purposely trying to sabotage our future. Yikes, sounds like her mom is auditioning for the role of wedding crasher, but like instead of crashing the party, she's crashing the planning. Sucks to be family. Story 2. I've been married 29 years and both my mother and my wife's were psycho before and after the wedding. The biggest problem is that we got engaged 3 months after we met. Actually, I knew sooner that I was going to ask her, and she knew sooner that she would say yes. I stopped dating someone else when I met her. Both mothers thought we were crazy even though we were in our mid-20s. Clarity and normalcy came to us when we realized that nothing my wife or I did had any impact at all on how our mothers would respond. We could do the same exact thing 15 minutes apart and would get completely opposite reactions. Once you realize there's absolutely nothing you can do that will satisfy them, it gives you a little power to stay calm. The only people that you absolutely need to answer to is each other. The worst mistake of my marriage was trying to stride a line in the middle between my wife and mother. It wasn't that I was backing my mother, but rather that I wasn't backing my wife, and 15 years ago, it nearly cost me our marriage. Once I manned up and realized my obligation, we were able to salvage and strengthen our relationship. You can't satisfy people like this, so don't even try. Just enjoy each other and the decisions you make together. If they're wrong, the pain is shared by two, and if they're right, the pleasure is doubled. How's that for a Hallmark line? Sweet, so these guys got engaged after only 3 months? This is the kind of love at first sight story you only see in the movies. Now this is a story every couple with crazy in-laws should read though too. Story 3. A wedding is just a day. A marriage is a lifetime. Don't think of today as the day I'm getting myself married, because your opinion toward today is already tainted. Think of today as our wedding day because mom-in-law demands it, and just get through it so you can enjoy your afternoon with your new bride. In a couple of years, you'll look back on today as the first day of my real life, which only began when I married the woman I love, and the bad feelings and horrors of today will be something to chuckle over. And good luck with the in-laws. You're in for a wild ride there, I suspect. Remember, support each other first. You can't let mom-in-law rule your life, and you can't let your own parents rule your life anymore either. This is kind of a difficult concept for the parents to grasp. They were making all decisions for you for the first 18 years of your life, and they don't understand yet that you now have someone else to make decisions with, and they're no longer responsible for you. It's a tough transition for some people to make. After today, you and your wife should be making decisions jointly. You can accept advice from the former decision makers, parents, and in laws, but remember it is only advice now. In all things, support each other when push comes to shove, and it will come to that, believe me. You have to be your wife's biggest champion, and vice versa. Also, don't bottle things up, but don't get heated either. Screaming never works. Communication is key to maintaining a lifelong friendship, and talking things out is always worthwhile. And having said that, if you're getting more and more upset over something, it's probably worth stepping out and going for a walk to cool off a little sometimes too. Oh, yeah, and wear sunscreen. Story 4. You don't need us to give you a reason. You are getting married to the person you love. I mean, sure, it sucks that your mother-in-law is crazy. Sure, you're not able to have a big fancy day. None of that should take away from the fact that you are getting married to someone you love. Congrats. I hope you have a happy life together. I am getting married this summer and hope that my crazy family does not ruin the reception. My fiance has a non-straight brother, or bi, I never really asked or cared, and I have some prejudiced uncles. Me and my fiance talked about this the other day as her brother is my groomsman and we told him to bring a date if he wants. Anyway, if anything is said, we have committed to me kissing the groomsman and my fiance kissing the bridesmaid. At the end of the day, even if things go bad at my wedding, I will still be with the lady I love, so that is pretty dandy. Congrats again and go buy some cake. Story 5. As someone who has had a wedding ruined and relationship ruined by an insane soon-to-be mother-in-law, I offer my heartfelt sympathies. But this is your wedding, and you are marrying a woman you love and who loves you in return. Do the short version today, that's fine. You are doing this for yourself and not for the psycho mom-in-law. I married my husband in my mom's living room with 10 people present. Our 3-month-old son was the best man, even had a tuxedo. It was so adorable. The wedding meant nothing to me. All that mattered was I was now joined with the best man I'd ever met, the father of my son, and the man that I loved. Love your wife? Let her love you. Who cares about your mom? About 13 or 14 years ago, I was dating a nice Jewish boy, and I thought we were happy together. He asked me to marry him, got me a nice big ring, and things I thought were going great. Mind you, throughout all of this, his mother hated my guts, and I knew this the whole time. When we first started dating, we actually had a joke that we would someday find out what was worse, Catholic grandmother guilt or Jewish mother guilt. It should be noted that Jewish mother guilt won in the end. When it came to planning the wedding, I wanted the nice and pretty one. I knew it wouldn't be big because neither of us were serious social butterflies, but I wanted the dress and the pretty flowers. My mother and I had found a nice place up in the Rocky Mountains. I lived in Denver. That was reasonably priced. My fiance and I picked a date and my mom put down a deposit for the place. It should be noted that right about here, our relationship started going downhill. It wasn't that we were fighting all the time, but my fiance suddenly had all these work trips that he was going on, and the times when he was home, he was distant. It was about 2 months later when my mom got a refund from the place we had reserved for the wedding. So she called them to find out what was going on, only to find that our reservation had been canceled. Because we were within some kind of window, my mom got a full refund, thank God. My mom calls me to find out why I canceled my wedding, and that was the first I'd heard of it. Turns out my soon-to-be mother-in-law had not only called the place, pretended to be my mother, and got our hold canceled, she had also introduced her son to a nice Jewish girl that would be more appropriate for him to date. So for the last 3 months of our relationship, when I was planning our wedding, he was stepping out. All those business trips were not trips, but hanging out with his new girlfriend. And he let his mom cancel the wedding without even telling me. Needless to say, we broke up and I moved out. And it was the best thing to happen to me because I'm sure I would have been horribly miserable having to deal with that woman for the rest of my life. I ended up meeting my husband. We got married, had a kid, not in that order. And his mom is a wonderful woman who I love with all my heart. Story 6. Someone mentioned not dealing with her directly and allowing your wife to put up with her. This is a bad idea. It will just mean that your wife will have to carry that burden alone. You will both be happier if you both have to deal with her. But also tell her that since she and you don't seem to see eye to eye on social and moral issues, she is only allowed to see her future grandchildren under the strict supervision of you and or your wife. You might find her changing her tune pretty quickly. When it comes to the wedding, which should be going on any minute now, congratulations. You found your soulmate and you got to be with her for the rest of your life. That should be good enough. I know we all want to have a beautiful wedding, but I have a good friend who was in a similar situation financially when he was married. It was very small and not a lot of fun, but they are 5 years in now and planning to hold the reception that they always wanted for their 10th anniversary. I suggest you both consider something like that. Story 7. This will likely be buried, but I was in a similar situation. I'm going to look like the bad guy, but I have no regrets. We moved out in March 1998, and we started getting calls and emails from the mother-in-law asking when we'd get married. By June, they were even offering to pay for the wedding if only we would get married, and here at that. My parents weren't well off at all, and they couldn't make the trip across the country. My in-laws disliked my parents, and despite the fact that they were willing to pay for the wedding, they wouldn't pay for my parents to come here. Meanwhile, they were gearing up to invite about 200 people from their side of the family. So we basically said, no, and said that if they were making us get married, then we were getting married 2 weeks from then. Civil ceremony in the park, immediate family, and our friends only. They were not impressed, but went through with it. The wedding cost a grand total of $1,500, including the reception. We paid for my bouquet, my dress was a plain summer dress, and the rings, which totaled about $300. They were simple gold bands. What's funny is that my husband and I came home at about 9 p.m., looked at each other and said, okay, we're married, and went to bed. We're celebrating our 14th anniversary on June 20th. And if you're enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 8. I got married almost 6 months ago. My husband and I planned it in about 2 months. He'd gotten a really good job, and we decided that we could take the leap. We'd been engaged for over 4 years at that point, just waiting for a little financial breathing room. When his mom caught wind, well, let's just say I spent most of that night drinking shots with a friend, livid that she was pissing on us. Then I remember that I don't like her much anyways, that it'd be a cold day in hell before she'd help with expenses and did what I wanted. My husband and I had an awesome, small wedding with about 50 guests. We spent a grand total, including my black wedding dress, of about $2,000. Once the day got there, it was all good. My mantra the whole time I planned my wedding was, why in the world would I throw a big party for people I don't really like anyways? So I threw a small, awesome party for myself, my husband, and our family and friends that weren't schmucks about it. Do what you want with it. It's yours and your wife's day. Don't let anyone take that away. So, a small, awesome wedding? Sounds like that's the way to go. Less drama and heck of a lot more fun. Story 9. I got married at 22. My wife was 21. Her parents were not, pleased, I suppose that is the nice way to say it. They cut off her school funding. I said we'd take out a loan. They didn't want a morning wedding and a lunch reception, so I told them it wasn't their decision. I said it was going to be dry and that we didn't need drinks to feel good about it. They weren't pleased. Her parents are divorced and remarried. Everyone had a problem with it, except me. I figured if we were old enough to get married, we were old enough to make our own decisions. I learned to say the following and eventually taught my wife, thank you for your input and ideas. We'll let you know what we decide. We don't make decisions quickly. We have a lot to discuss and think about. Thank you for your input. I'm sorry you feel that way. This might be the most important. I made it a point of pride to never ask for any help from her parents or mine. I picked up the tab every now and then, and if we went out for dinner, I even paid for her siblings sometimes if they were with us. I'd hand my credit card to the waiter when they were not looking so there wouldn't be a discussion about it at the table. After 6 years of this, I figured we'd be past it. But no, the subject of children came up, and because I was a man, I was the problem. I was holding my wife back in my MIL's eyes. We explained once, we had a list, sell the house and move into a new one, pay off the student loans with the profit from the house, buy a van. 1 year was our goal. The second time she brought it up at a family dinner, I said, we've explained what we're doing. I'm sorry you feel that way, but we won't go into this debt. We beat our goal by 4 months and started trying early in September, but didn't tell anyone. Come November and Thanksgiving dinner, it was noted with contempt that now that my list was complete, I would create a new list to keep from having children. I said, well, our van isn't running well, and then for the first time, my wife chimed in without missing a beat, and we really should have a house with a garage. My MIL was mad, furious even. Never going to have grandchildren? Glory, no. It ruined dinner for everyone involved. Awkward, to say the least. Christmas dinner was no better. Again, talking down to me for holding back my wife's dream of children and my wife for not putting her foot down about it. In February, we became pregnant and after about a week or two stopped by to deliver the good news. MIL was excited. Then the story of how we'd been trying since September. I watched my mother-in-law as my wife told the story. MIL became very quiet. When my wife was done, my MILs looked at me. You lied to me at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Yes. You let me make a fool of myself in front of the whole family. Yes. You were playing a game with me, weren't you? Yes. Yes, I was, and I won. Are you going to start treating us like adults? Yes. Good, then we won't have to go through this again. It's been another 6 years and things have been much better since then. So you're married now. Congratulations. Your family is you and your wife. You chose each other. Your decisions are yours, not anyone else's. Talk about it with your wife and decide how to act before the problems present themselves. Stand up, not for you, but for your family. Empower your wife to do the same. Story 10. This will probably get buried, but some advice from one girl with a crazy mom to another. Cut her off. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, she's family, but she's making you both miserable. There was absolutely no reason good enough to not cut off all contact with crazy mom. My mother is insanely overbearing, controlling, and religious. She constantly pestered me over my boyfriend, did everything possible to separate us, and threw all kinds of fits. And I put up with this for 2 years. I lived the first 2 years of being in a wonderful relationship with someone I love, living in constant stress and oftentimes depression. And you know what? Who cares? Not only is your wife's mom making her miserable, she's making you miserable. And when I realized that my mom wasn't just affecting me, she was affecting us as a couple, I realized how wrong I was trying to salvage my relationship with her. If she won't do it for herself, she needs to do it for your relationship and for the man she loves. It's been only 2 months since I've cut her off, and while it wasn't easy at first, I'm actually starting to feel happy, secure, and free. I'm able to enjoy my life with my SL. So don't let this crazy woman ruin your wedding because, you know what? She won't stop there. She'll try and ruin your marriage too. Yep, cutting off a toxic family member is like spring cleaning for your mental health. Story 11. My mom seems pretty similar to your new mother-in-law, minus the religiousness. Mine doesn't even bother bringing up an omnipotent being to blame for her opinions. And she seems to hate my boyfriend. She was getting way too involved and had finally reached a fever pitch of insanity. So after one particularly bad disagreement, I finally looked her in the eye and said, "Stop trying to be the third person in this relationship. I'm an adult and my relationship does not concern you." Well, she flipped out and left the room sobbing and I didn't answer her calls for a while. When I decided she had had enough tantrum time, I rebuilt a relationship with her and found she had taken my words to heart. Ever since then, she's been very hands-off about my relationship and now treats me like an adult. So if your mother-in-law continues to try to be controlling, your wife needs to give her mom a serious wake-up call. Either the mom has a relationship on her daughter's terms, or her daughter can simply cut the mom out of her life. With some crazy it takes an ultimatum to get them thinking straight. Make the mom see that family is a privilege, not a right. Story 12. This, sir, is the exact reason my wife and I got married and had our honeymoon in Mexico. Only my sister and uncle and their spouses showed up, perfectly fine by us. As my friends start to get married and do it near home, I felt bad for them. All the planning and griping that goes along with a modern-day marriage just angers me off. Marriage is about the two getting married and starting a life together. It's that simple. When we first announced we were getting married, her mother started with "we should do it here. You should wear this. You should invite these people," etc. My wife and I knew instantly this would not fly. So we hatched a plan knowing that we needed to get as far away as possible. Hell, we still sent invitations to family members knowing full well they couldn't afford it. Kind of like "we'd like you to come, but understand if you can't make it." So we had 12 painless days of marriage and honeymoon all rolled into one trip away from the drama. We knew full well that we had to have some kind of get-together, so we had a reception back home. Drama ensued, but since drinks were involved, we didn't care. We put together a movie slideshow of the ceremony in Mexico and displayed it on a projector at the reception. It went over better than we could have hoped for. As I look at my own son, I really do hope he does the same for his sanity's sake. Though hopefully I have the money to attend. Ha! P.S. It also helps if your wife-to-be doesn't worship her mother. And well, if you like these stories and related to at least one of them, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.